You're listening to The Grip, where we take hold of mindset and martial arts. Now, let's get started. Today's guest brings an incredible depth of experience across martial arts, coaching, and real-world violence prevention. He's a 4th degree black belt in Gendai Ryu, Krav Maga, and Jiu-Jitsu, as well as a black belt in Kudo and Danzan Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. His martial arts journey spans decades, with consistent training across disciplines including boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Eskrima, karate, and more, while continuing to specialize in Krav Maga as his primary focus. Beyond the mats, he holds a Bachelor of Business in Finance and Economics and has spent years not just training, but deeply studying and researching the dynamics of real-world violence. He's been coaching for around 20 years, helping students develop skills in Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and kickboxing. He also spent nearly 12 years building and running the Combat Arts Institute of Australia, shaping countless martial artists along the way. Professionally, he served as the general manager of training and consulting at Risk 2 Solution, Australia's most awarded integrated risk management firm, where he was also the national practice lead for violence prevention. Today, he continues to coach at the Barn Martial Arts and Fitness, bringing his wealth of experience and knowledge to the next generation. And beyond all of that, he's a proud husband and father of 2 daughters. Please welcome to the show, Ron Amram.
Hey, Kaylee. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
Good
coming
evening.
on, Ron.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. For those listening, Ron is my first Australian on the show, and so we have quite the time change. And so, bless his heart, he took the morning shift, and so it's about 6 o'clock my time and about, 7 a.m. your time?
7 a.m., yeah.
You're a champ. So he's got his coffee in hand, and it's going to be a good one. So,
What time?
all right, Ron. So before we dive into all things martial arts and just your journey and all the great things that you're doing, I understand that you moved to Australia. So you weren't born and raised in Aussie, but you've been there for quite some time. Moved there at 16. So can you first start off by just telling me a little bit about what life was like before moving to Australia and eventually how martial arts came into your life?
Sure. So I was born in Israel and I grew up in Jerusalem. Lovely place, amazing food, good people. Martial arts, I've always had an interest. In fact, my first memory of anything martial artsy is my brother teaching me how to do the crane kick, like in the kitchen when I was 5-ish, something like that. And, I remember my brothers, I've got 2 older brothers, always watching like martial arts movies and action movies, stuff like that. I always had an interest. My mom practiced Shotokan karate for a little while. And I actually remember, seeing her come home and like a kata in the living room and stuff like that. And I just thought it was the coolest. So I wanted to get involved. So I did karate a little bit when I was a kid. I can't remember for how long. And I dabbled in some martial arts programs we had running at school and stuff like that. I then dabbled in Aikido for a couple of years when I was in my early teens. One of my friends' dads was a 3rd Dan. So we used to just go to his house and practice. And we did that for a while. And then we moved to like a, community center. I actually ran like formal classes there for a while. And then I got into fencing when I was 14 or 15. And really got into that. So I haven't done much competition martial arts. It's never been my, something I was deeply interested in. Just a couple of small comps here and there. But with fencing, I really took to it. I really enjoyed it. So I trained a lot. I competed a little bit. I did quite well. So, life was interesting. I think I was a fairly quiet, reserved kid. I was like really nerdy. I was like overweight. I was quite shy. So practicing those things, helped build some confidence and get a bit fitter and meet some people. My dad passed away from cancer when I was 14.
Mm,
And then I went from being, a kind of reserved, quiet kid to being a ragey, angry teen, and like continuously got into trouble and fights in school, and just
mm-hmm,
got into a whole bunch of trouble and up to no good. And that's also, I think, where I had some realizations about what violence, quote unquote, looks like in the dojo and what it looks like outside of the dojo, and how those two, at least in the way that I was training, wasn't marrying. Right.
mm-hmm.
So I remember the first time that I got kind of bullied by some kid, and I get into this like white karate stance as I was talking, and he just kicked me in the nuts. I literally kind of fell over, curled up on the floor, and I'm going, this is no, this is just not what I was training for at all. Um, as I did, listen, when I was kind of 14, 15, 16, I did get into a lot of trouble in school. I was continuously getting into fights, and I started figuring out what was the stuff that does work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll make the guy look that way, hit him and run away,
Yeah.
as opposed to, square up. And so in the back of my mind, even before I really delved into the whole violence prevention thing, there was always something going like there's training and there's, like self-defense or violence, and they're not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't kind of gel together until much later on in life. But yeah, so that was life in Israel. It was great. It was tumultuous. And then when we moved, I think it was my mom, God bless her, had realized that I was probably never going to finish high school. My mom's sister, so my auntie, had actually planned to move her with her husband and kids. So like her husband and my cousins, and mom just thought it would be a good change of scene for me and my sister, given that, dad had passed away, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe we just needed like a fresh start somewhere, which didn't do me any good in terms of doing better at school, but did but did create other opportunities, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. And so early on, what you trained was Shotokan and Aikido. Is that how you say
Yeah,
it? Okay. And
yeah,
so
sure.
I looked these up just to kind of give our listeners a definition too, because I know these can be maybe unfamiliar terms to some. And so
Mm,
Shotokan is a traditional Japanese martial art characterized by powerful linear techniques, deep stances, and a focus on long range sparring. It emphasizes character development, self discipline, and physical fitness over competition, focusing on total body coordination. Training consists of basics, forms, and sparring. And then Aikido is a modern Japanese martial art focusing on nonviolent self defense by blending with an attacker's energy, using circular movements, joint locks, and throws to neutralize threats without causing serious injury. And so, with those being your initial background, that kind of makes sense to me how you're like, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what I'm learning from a traditional standpoint, which is still very beneficial,
yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily, if I just solely do these practices, it's not going to save me from this bully that's about to kick me in the nuts.
yeah, 100%. So so the way that I see it, and the way that I see it, it's not anything new, but my interpretation of, if we look at martial arts as a whole, I would break it down into three categories, right? So we've got traditional martial arts like Shotokan or Aikido or traditional Jiu-Jitsu or Kendo or any of those kind of things, where the goal of the practitioner, more or at least the main focus, is you're looking at, kind of immersing yourself in the culture of that art. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
time you learn the language, you wear whatever funky pajamas we train in that style. There's a lot of forms and a lot of very kind of choreographed movements. The person punches like this, they leave their arm hanging out, you move around it, you blend, and they're very beautiful. And they can teach you they can really help with technical development and, control and focus and that kind of stuff. Combatively, I don't know. I think that depends on how you train. So for me, there's traditional martial arts on one side. Then on the other side, we've got stuff like combat sports.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're looking, like boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, et cetera, et cetera. And now what we're looking, obviously, is focusing on competition. So there's a lot of cleaning out of the curriculum, depends on what works for the rule set that you compete in, and then focusing very much on training that narrow field, but the methodology of training is more combatively effective in that. you train as Matt Thornton would say, the SBG, Trade Plus Gym, BJJ guru, aliveness. All right. So the idea is we're training without set patterns. Timing is not predictable. You're training with real energy. You're training with an opponent who's not just going to let you do what it is that you want to do, and at the same time, they're going to try and do something to you that you don't want them to do.
Yeah.
Which brings you closer to real world dynamics. So you got the traditional martial arts and the combat sports. And I think the other thing that's important to mention in the combat sports realm, obviously, the idea is to create a competition of skill. So when we create a competition of skill, we remove anything that is not skill based. We have, people who are, if you look at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, for example, the rule set is very specific. It is also informed by the kind of uniform that you're wearing. And then there are belt brackets, age brackets, and weight brackets. So we're fighting somebody who's the same age, the same weight, the same level, with the idea is that we remove everything and we just pit skill against skill. But, again, if you're looking at real world violence, if somebody's trying to hurt you, they're going to do exactly the opposite. They're going to try and stack
Right.
everything in their favor. So we got traditional martial arts, we got combat sports, and then we got the self-defense stuff, where now we're
Right.
looking at how do we apply this stuff in the context of not being in the dojo. I don't love the term of the street because it most of the time, at least from my experience, when people say, "Oh, we're training for the street," it's like two guys at a bar, and violence is much bigger than just that, right?
Yeah.
But then we're starting to look at adding all these additional things of what happens before the incident. Right? Situational awareness, boundary setting, violence dynamics, conflict communication, de-escalation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What happens during the conflict, and then potentially what happens after. If we're looking at dealing with trauma, with retaliation, with criminal or civil litigation. So those things are generally not covered in the other two domains. Where the problem lies with pure self-defense, I think, is a lot of time people rush to going, here's the stuff that only works in the street. I don't have to work on any of the other things. Like, I'll just kick the guy where it hurts or poke him in the eye, and that's enough. We don't spark with the techniques are too deadly, kind of, which I think is BS. So I think, and I'm kind of going on some tangents here, right? But I think finding that balance is important, depending on what it is that you want to train with. So, we kind of started with talking about Shotokan and Aikido, which if we're thinking of this as a triangle, you got traditional martial arts and combat sports and self-defense, and things can sit anywhere within that triangle. Those two probably sit closer to that corner.
Yep, exactly.
And over time, I kind of went, that way and then that way, then some back there. And now I sit probably somewhere in the bottom, but yeah.
And let's dive into a little bit of that merging of your journey, because you competed in fencing. How many years did you compete in fencing?
A couple of years.
Okay. And
so from 13 or 14 to about 16 and a half.
Okay. Which I had a prior guest, Boris, who also did fencing. And I was like,
I'm
learning about something that I knew nothing about. And so I love that there's now two people I've had. But it's clearly a bit different than most martial arts in general. But how did that background in fencing shape your approach to timing, distance management, strategy? Do you see some correlation from what you took from fencing to what you do today?
So I still often, I've been told that I box like I fence. Like I tend to be very long. I like to use the front hand a lot to kind of feel what's going on, and a lot of kind of in and out movement. So I think in terms of fencing, obviously I've got very explosive footwork. A lot of kind of very fast twitch movements. And there's actually a lot of tactile sensitivity to it, because a lot of the time you're foil feeling what the other person's feeling. So there's actually a lot of contact. It's just through an extension of the weapon, which I think, and I kind of do when I box as well. So I still box in that way sometimes. Over time, it's changed. But I think in a sense, it also given me some bad habits in that everything is very linear, as opposed to, creating angles
circling
and moving around. Yeah. And also because it is point-based, you have a tendency to score and stop, which in every other kind of like real combative endeavor is not a good thing to do. Dodo streets is because you hit the guy once the fight is over, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I still do it quite a lot. I watch it on the odd occasion. Admittedly, I haven't in a very, very long time.
Very cool background, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it, but yeah, it's been a very long time.
Yeah. And so after moving to Australia at 16, there was a period where you weren't training. What initially pulled you back into martial arts, and why Krav Maga in particular?
Okay, so there were a couple of things that, even though I wasn't training, I was still keeping fit. So I was swimming a lot. I was going to the gym a lot. I was still playing sports, doing exercise. I've always enjoyed that. And I find I'm also the kind of person, if I don't exercise, like my mental health just breaks. Even my wife now, like if I don't go to the gym for 2 days, she's like, "Ron, get out of the house, do something. I'll be around you. You're just miserable." So I've always kept fit. When I was probably, I can't remember, it might have been 18 or 19. Not long after I moved out of home, I stumbled onto UFC 1. And, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just absolutely blown away. And I was living with my cousins at the time, and another friend and my housemates were all just like, "This is horrible. This is just violence. These guys are just messing each other up." And I was like, "No, no, no. This is the best thing that I've ever seen. I got to figure out how to do this." So I watched that for a while, but even after that, I didn't get back into it probably for another year or two. Krav Maga actually happened kind of incidentally. I was looking for a place to train. There was a place that was doing like traditional jiu-jitsu, dansan root jiu-jitsu, not far from where I was living. I was like, I'll go check it out, and thought it was really, really cool, and just got into that. The gentleman who was teaching that, Sensei Noah Greenstone, who is a phenomenal martial artist, who's a high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner and a bunch of stuff. Actually grew up in LA, trained in the Santo Academy. He was, I think, an Olympic alternate in judo for the States, won like 1 million titles, trained in Japan for like 10 years. Like he did a lot of cool things. So what?
This is where you started. You said Danzan. Is that how you say it?
Danzanru,
Danzan.
yeah.
And you said that that's a Hawaiian.
Yeah. So,
Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or if there is there? Do you see a
so
big difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and
Japanese jiu-jitsu? Or I
yeah?
mean, yeah. So it is considered Japanese jiu-jitsu. So it was developed by a
Oh,
guy called
okay.
Henry Okazaki, who was a Japanese guy who moved to Hawaii, I think, after the Second World War.
Oh, okay.
He had a background in judo, so a lot of the techniques that were practiced were very judo influenced. So we did
Okay.
some randori, like some kind of like, free wrestling. You learned a lot of throws, a lot of submissions. Um, massive difference between that and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I've dabbled in a couple of other kind of traditional jiu-jitsu styles, and they're generally very different in that. Firstly, they're generally not competition styles. So there's no, if you pass guard, you get X points and you have to hold position for X number of seconds. And like it's not trained in that way at all.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis is more on self-defense. Uh, so there's a lot of defenses against like grabs, holds, chokes. Then you transition into throws. Then you transition into ground submissions, and then transitioning into chaining those together. So it was a really cool style, really awesome. What I find the differences between a lot of the traditional Japanese stuff and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the training methodology itself is very different. So I had the benefit and the privilege of training with Noah, who obviously had a lot of competition experience and a lot of self-defense kind of training experience. I'll get to that in a second. So we train in a live way quite often, but a lot of the more traditional ways of doing that, which is very similar to, for example, in Aikido, you get these, one person will attack you and they'll kind of go, throw the lunging punch, and they'll just stay in like the flying Superman pose for 10
Yeah.
seconds while you kind of dance around and do all your movements, which looks really cool, never works.
Right.
Like the second the person moves their hand back, you've lost that. So we had the benefit of training that in a live way. But I think in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, pretty much from day dot, you're rolling. You're always working with resistance. You're always working with energy. So you get used to finding out what really works and what doesn't in real time. And it forces you to problem solve in real time, which I think is awesome. Yeah. So a few differences there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Sorry to interrupt.
go on,
I
please.
appreciate the explanation too. And so you were training under him, and then after you started within kind of the jiu-jitsu realm, they also offered Krav Maga there.
Okay. So the really cool thing about training with Noah was that he has a wealth of martial arts. He's done a lot of things in a lot of different styles. So while what we were getting graded in was Danzan Jiu-Jitsu, sometimes we'd rock up and he'd go, today we're working Kali. And we just get sticks and we start working patterns and then today we're going to do some craft stuff, some self-defense. And today we're going to do striking. So like you never really know what you're getting, which was really cool. So while I was grading in Danzan Jiu-Jitsu, I was actually kind of cross-training with him in a lot of different things. Really
Yeah,
depends on what do we feel like doing today.
sure.
The other thing that I started doing at the same time, because I kind of got into it and I went from not having done martial arts in a few years and then, just staying fit, going to the gym and then starting to train with Noah. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever. Now, Noah was only teaching at the time. I think we were doing classes. It was like Tuesdays and Thursdays in the evening and then Saturday or Sunday morning or something like that. I was like, I want to train more. So I had another friend of mine who was doing Muay Thai somewhere else. So I went and started training with her the other 3 days a week.
Mm,
Uh, so I've kind of taken a break, but then I got back into it with a vengeance, and I was
you're
training,
right.
kind of like 3, 4 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, and kind of maintained that for 20 years almost.
Yes.
Like I just couldn't get enough of it. I still can't. It's just my body doesn't let me do that way anymore. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
And so having that experience training across an incredible range of systems between Krav Maga, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, BJJ, Eskrima, and many more, what has that breadth taught you that someone maybe just training in one style might be missing out on?
so I think a lot of it actually has to do, firstly, probably with what is it that you're looking to get out of your training. So, if what you're looking is to, here's a culture that I'm really interested in, Filipino culture, the Japanese culture, and I just want to kind of do a deep dive into something that's great. I think if you want to be able to like to fight and to protect yourself, then there's a couple of things you have to do, right? If you're looking at the way that violence happens in the real world, it is very rarely limited to, you know, we're only going to punch each other. We're only going to kick each other. We're only going to grapple each other. By definition, it can incorporate a lot of different things because the person is going to try and hurt you in whatever the way they can. And if you're looking at, MMA competition, there's still quite a big rule set, right? Like you can punch, you can kick, you can elbow, you can knee, you can throw. I mentioned I trained in Kudo as well. So Kudo is kind of like the Japanese equivalent of MMA. It's a relatively new style. So similar rules set to MMA, except you're wearing a gi and like a helmet, and you're also allowed to headbutt each other, which is a ton of fun if you've never done it. I highly recommend it. Um, um, so I think, being able to cross train a lot, if your goal is to protect yourself, firstly, it gives you the ability to fight at multiple ranges. So whether that's fighting with a weapon, whether that's kicking and punching range, whether that's clinching range, whether that's on the ground, and then also looking at how you integrate those in an effective way. Um, that's one. The other thing I think is just the more you cross train, the more you start seeing parallels between different patterns of movement, ways of thinking. You can start getting different perspectives on things and start really making things your own. Um, so I find, we talked about, I kind of box like I fence sometimes. I also spent about 10 years doing Filipino martial arts, and I still do a lot of kind of the hand patterns and things like that. And that's really influenced how I deal with certain things. I've dabbled in a bunch of different kicking styles, for example. So I did, Shotokan karate for a while, did Muay Thai for a long time. I trained in Kyokushin for a few years. So, I found for me, for example, when I spar, I kick more like a Kyokushin guy than a Muay Thai guy. So, you start finding things you can piece together in a way that makes sense to you. And, getting different perspectives on anything, whether that's in martial arts or in life, I think makes you a better person, right? Like if you take yourself out of your comfort zone and go, cool, let me see how somebody else thinks about the same problem. Maybe there's something I
Mhm.
can learn from that. I
Yeah.
think that's important.
Yeah. And from early on, you started kind of noticing the disconnect between maybe not disconnect, but that there was, differences between traditional martial arts, combat sports, and self-defense systems. How did you personally start to reconcile or merge those differences? And do you now try and coach that way? Or, what was that process like?
No, that's a really good question. So, when I started training with Noah, a lot of that stuff started clicking together. Like we trained something that maybe I had done in a different system, but it wasn't so much what we were training as much as how we were training. And like I said, that aliveness concept of the idea of
Mm-hmm.
training with, with resistance, with energy, with broken timing, not always practicing set patterns. It's the same as saying you can look really good on the pads, but then you can't spar because it's not a set pattern. You can look really good drilling arm bars, but you can't roll. It's almost the same as that, right?
Yeah.
So with Noah, we were training in an alive way quite a lot, and then things started clicking. Going, I think that's where the gap was for me. But even going further from that, there are still things. If we're looking at learning, and again, if going to that cross training thing, one of the things that could be a problem with cross training is that you learn a lot. If we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the way that violence happens, generally it looks the same a lot of the time, depending on the type of violence you're looking at. So sometimes having too many tools can actually be a problem. Like if something
Mm.
happens quickly and somebody's in your face and you're adrenalized and you go, is it technique 400 B or C that I'm looking to do right now? Like you don't have the time to like, you just need to be able to react.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think of it, for me, it kind of looks like a decision tree where, I've got a single decision at the beginning. Do I do A or B? And then things fan out from there.
Mm-hmm.
When you cross train, sometimes you spend too much time at the top and not enough time at the bottom.
Sure.
So, and where that started changing in terms of how my approach to training was when I met Dr. Gavriel Schneider. Gav is the head of my Krav Maga system of Gendai Ryu, phenomenal martial artist, very well experienced in kind of all those three realms. Like he's done a lot of traditional stuff. He competed at a super high level. He's one of the foremost experts on self-defense and risk management, and I've worked with him for many years as well. Um, so he kind of started clearing some of that stuff for me and go, you should start here and work your way up rather than start at the top and work your way down. So like learn a lot and then try and figure out what's going on. And really it comes down to us learn fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Have like a core curriculum, core set of skills that will function for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then from that, you can expand.
Yeah.
I met Gav, would have been, 16 years ago ish.
Yeah.
Firstly, through a series of seminars. Um, and, did the first seminar with him, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is the secret sauce right there. And so that really changed my approach to going, okay, let's focus on fundamentals, work from that. And even within our style, different people teach in different ways. The focus that we have is self-defense comes first. Right? The idea of Krav Maga has always been, self-defense. Like that's why the system was designed in the first place, and that's still the main driver for people who train. So we want to look at what are the most common situations you'll find yourself in. If we took it purely about the physical stuff, what are the physical tools you can use for those? And then gradually add the what if. You know, I've done this and this and this. The person does something else. What do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it. The other part of it is, we've got self-defense and fighting. So we do expect everybody who trains with us work on your self-defense skills first, understand the mindset of what it's like to train for self-protection. But then you got to be able to spar, you got to be able to roll, you got to be able to wrestle, you got to be able to integrate them. So essentially doing MMA,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to be able to do that with or without or against weapons, and then against multiple attackers as well.
That's a really cool approach and structure within a
Thank you.
gym environment.
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things that we also then encourage everybody is to cross train because it's hard to do everything. If you're just doing Krav Maga twice a week, we got that that's a lot to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So when Noah and I opened Combat Arts Institute of Australia, the idea was very much to give people that, right? We wanted to have an environment where people can come and learn what is practical, uh, but also have the opportunity to cross train with different experts in different areas. So rather than have one person go, I can teach you everything, go, let's get some really good striking coaches, get some really good grappling coaches, get some really good traditional weapons coaches. People can come and learn Krav, but at some point we're going to go, you are naturally a striker. Your striking is really good. You can make that work. You need to work on some grappling, go to some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a year while you're still doing Krav, and you can do everything here.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of gyms who kind of do that, I think, these days. I think one of the things that was unique in the approach that we had was that it wasn't necessarily geared just for competition. Like we had people in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who were competing a lot, but not so much in anything else. So again, we always maintained that self-defense first mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody that's trying to become well-rounded, it sounds like where you think they should start is, of course, fundamentals and then being willing and open to cross-training. But some of the bigger mistakes that some of these people might make is when trying to cross-train, if you're up here and you're learning all the skills and fine-tuning, making sure that you are coming back down to the basics and the fundamentals.
Always. And I think that applies for every martial art, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you see any other mistakes that people make when trying to cross-train, or do you feel like that's a major one?
Again, I think it depends on what the training outcome they're looking for is. Um, you can get caught in stuff that you like as opposed to stuff that will make you better.
Mm,
Right.
that's so relatable.
No, totally. And, I think like the most common feedback I have to give people, like when we do a grading, people come, what do I need to work for? And I'm like, what do you like doing the least? There's your answer most of the time.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. We tend to stick to what we're good at because, we get comfortable. And again, one of the benefits of cross training that gets you out of that, you can be the best Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner in the world. And then you get thrown into a boxing and you go, what the hell's going on? And vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yeah.
So, it helps maintain that mindset of, always a student, sometimes a teacher.
Yeah.
Like there's always more to learn and get better. So, yeah, so sorry, but I'm digressing.
No, I
In
love
terms
it.
of mistakes, yeah, I think people tend to get caught in what they like as opposed to what will necessarily make them better. And I think the other thing that's hard is when you're cross training a lot, like it becomes more and more balls to juggle, right? And you have to recognize you go, okay, my striking's really good. I want to work on my grappling for a while. I want to spend some time doing wrestling or judo or BJJ or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're noticing that your striking is starting to fall apart.
Mhm.
This is coming up. So there's this juggle of finding that balance of going, how do I get better at one thing while also maintaining other skill sets?
Yeah.
And giving yourself a little bit of leeway to recognize there's a chance that other skills may deteriorate as you focus on one thing, and you're constantly going to have to kind of jump back and forth, and that could be a bit of a play with your head a little bit.
Yeah. But so important just to have some self-reflection, right?
100%. And different people practice martial arts differently. I think one of the benefits that I've had in terms of the mentors that I've had, that from very, very early on, we were always encouraged to like take notes after class and write down. In fact, to get my black belt in Danzo and Jiu-Jitsu, I actually had to submit like a notebook rather. Essentially all my notes going, here are all the techniques that we learn in the system. Here's how I would teach them to someone. Here's what I think makes them work. So you really you finish your class, you learn something, I'll get my notebook and I'll start writing, going like, here's what I did, here's what I think it works, here's what I think are like what they call in Japanese, the kihon, the kind of key fundamental of that specific technique. It would work in this situation, maybe it wouldn't work in that situation. And that's actually part of your final assessment. Funny thing is, reading those notes 5 years and 10 years, 20 years, oh man, I got it so wrong. I had no idea what I was talking about.
But it made so much sense back then.
Totally. But, like your perspectives changes over time.
Yeah.
You gain deeper understanding of things. You go, wow,
Sure.
I thought I got it, but it was actually just like at the kind of top
Surface level.
Surface level, yeah. So I've always been encouraged to do that from early on, which is something I encourage my students to do as well. So I think when you are cross training a lot and you've got all these different things, and it's always useful to do that. Just a lot of self-reflection. And again, as a person,
Yeah.
in every endeavor in life, it's something that's worth doing.
Yes.
I digressing a little bit again, but I made a bit of a career change about 18 months ago from having worked in martial arts and kind of security, violence prevention, risk management, kind of packaging those things together for the better part of 20 years to something totally different. So I work in the energy sector now, work for like a power company as an operations manager. Very, very different. One of the things that I started doing when I started working there was actually started submitting reports to my boss every month. I was like, here's what I did this month. Here's what I think worked. Here's what I think didn't work. Here's what I can do better next time. Here's what I need help with. Here's what I need from you. And he was like, that's amazing. I can't believe nobody else. So now everybody else has to do it as well, which I don't think has given me a lot of love, but
They're like, Ron.
just create extra work for everybody. But I think the process of reflection is just so important.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter if it's your job, if it's parenting, if it's relationships, if it's playing sports, if it's podcasting. We have to reflect on what we do. Otherwise, we just do the same thing over and over again. Why do we don't move forward?
Yeah. And I like that you just you went from initially having this self-reflection and kind of template that you were using for jujitsu, but it's cool that you applied almost that same reflection and conversation that you were having with yourself to now almost with other people, right? And I think that's where a lot of breakdowns can happen is one, either the conversations that we have with ourselves and having realistic and honest, self-reflections, as well as with others, friends, family, coworkers, and being able to do that in a constructive and, positive or productive manner. So yeah, it goes like tenfold. So
No, totally. And you mentioned, I think, constructive and efficient. And I think also important to be kind to yourself with those. Like when I started doing reflections, I would just literally, I would just sit there and just give myself shit. Like it wasn't actually constructive. Like it was just like, this was crap and that was bad and that was it.
right.
And it took me a long time to go, I actually need to be kinder with myself and go,
Yeah.
if you were giving this feedback to somebody else, how would you say it?
Yeah.
Because I tend to be a lot nicer when I give it to students than I am to give it to myself.
You're right.
So I almost had to look at it from kind of a third person perspective and give feedback to myself that way, even write it in the third person
Yep.
to force myself to look at it a bit more objectively,
Yeah.
as if I was coaching someone rather than just assessing myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so before you made this big career change, you had many, many years of studying violence and beyond just physical techniques. So can you tell me what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about real world violence or self-defense in general?
I can talk about this for the next probably few days. Um, so let me start with, in terms of how we train self-defense. Touched on the fact that we've got traditional martial arts, combat sports, self-defense, right? But if you were looking to start training self-defense and you just go, self-defense classes in my area, you'll get every martial arts gym that comes up in the area and they all advertise it as self-defense.
Right.
Get fit, learn how to protect yourself, meet cool people. That's generally like the spiel, right?
Yes.
Or like any variation of those three things. So that is not always the case, right? Learning how to throw a good 1-2 doesn't teach you how to scan your environment, identify that somebody's becoming agitated, or how to de-escalate the situation, or also how to deal with, something that's not just a 1-2. So I think there is, from the industry perspective, as practitioners, we need to do a bit of self-reflection and go, what am I basing that statement that I'm teaching self-defense on? Am I basing it based on the fact that, I watch a lot of UFC and that's what I think violence looks like? Am I basing it because my sensei, going back 18 generations in Japan was a samurai and that's how they did things then? Well, that's not how we do things now. Where is my knowledge of violence coming from?
Yeah.
Right. And for the most part, how do people learn about violence? Well, number one, we see a lot of it in movies, media, stuff like that, but that's got no correlation to what violence looks like in the real world. It could be experiential. It could be watching sports, or, in some contexts, it might be experiential or vocational. If you work in a frontline role as a police officer, corrections, security, etc., you might have to deal with violence on a regular basis. But even then, you're looking at it from the perspective of, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm going forward into a situation, deal with it. I've got tools to work with. I've got support. I've got a whole bunch of other things. That is very different to a single parent who's got 2 kids, who's dealing with domestic violence situation, who's going, I finally got the courage to actually do something, go to a gym and learn how to defend myself. They walk into the gym and all they see is, 18 to 24-year-old guys bashing each other and the coach is yelling and everyone going like, they're just going to turn around and walk out. So, as practitioners, what is our experience with violence? Where do we get the knowledge of what does real violence look like? And are we actually teaching people to deal with that as opposed to our version of violence?
Mhm.
And that's a big thing. And I think all it takes there, honestly, is a bit of honest reflection and some research. Like it doesn't have to, you don't have to, a PhD in criminology to go look up some statistics on domestic violence in your area. Look up some YouTube videos because there's a bazillion of them of what do real fights look like and how they happen. Read a couple of books on something and you go, okay, you already know more than like 90% of the industry,
Yeah.
right? You could do that in a few short months.
Yeah.
Right. There's plenty of good online courses and things like that. So I think that's a good place to start. Then the next part of that is also looking at how we, as I mentioned, there's for me, the big difference between just learning self-defense and learning pretty much anything else is the focus on the pre and post elements of conflict. All right. So if you go to a school that claims to teach self-defense, but they don't teach you violence dynamics, what do different types of violence look like? How do predators select targets? How do you deal with the social violence situation? What's the difference between social and antisocial violence? How do you scan your environment? What do you look for? What are the signs that somebody's becoming agitated? How do you communicate under pressure or under stress? What are some good, effective conflict communication de-escalation techniques? And I mean, those are all big topics, right? If you're not learning that stuff, you're probably not learning self-defense. You're learning how to fight. You could be learning how to fight in the street, in self-defense context, but you're not learning how to protect yourself because the consequences of failing to do that are actually greater than, you could be a phenomenal martial artist, an MMA practitioner, or world champion, fail to see a situation develop. You have your kids and your partner with you. Something happens, you drop somebody, they fall on the floor, crack their head. Now they can't move from the neck down. Your kid has now seen you hurt somebody. How does that impact your relationship at home with your kids, with your partner, right? Are you liable in criminal court for the damage you've inflicted upon this person? Did you have the options to run or de-escalate or do something else? Are you
Mhm.
liable for the fact that they might not be able to work for the next 30 years? And how's that impact you financially? And that's because maybe if you just learn how to scan for the signs that somebody's becoming agitated and walk away 20
Mhm.
seconds earlier, you wouldn't be there in the first place. So a lot of time that stuff isn't taught. Now, why I think it isn't taught is a combination of things. I think one, people don't know. And again, that's just a matter of going, cool, let me do some research and actually learn. Two is, and this is where the challenge is, I think, in terms of running a commercial gym, it just doesn't pay the bills. People don't want to learn that stuff. They want to learn how to punch and kick. Like, I want to
The
go and
flashy
have a,
things.
yeah, I want to go and have a workout and, you don't break a sweat from sitting, listening to somebody talk about situational awareness. So where I think the balance is for me is we mention the stuff, like we sprinkle it out throughout regular classes. But like once every few weeks, we'll sit down and go, cool, after class on a Saturday, we'll sit down for an hour or two. Let's talk about this particular topic. And we'll do that on a regular basis. Then we start incorporating more and more of that into classes. You build into scenarios, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think in terms of how we present it to people who don't know, there's a misalignment. I think that majority of the time it's not out of ill intent. It's just people don't know and go, this is what violence is. I watch UFC, I understand what violence is, and this is what I teach. Not always the
Yeah.
case. And even then being able to contextualize that more to the people who come to you specifically. So one of the things that we see is a lot of the time if you go to a martial arts style, more common with traditional styles, but it could be any style, they've got their core curriculum. Like this is what we teach. This is how we teach it. This is how we structure it. And usually there'll be a good kind of logical flow for why it's structured in that way, right? Does that work for everybody? Well, not necessarily. So if you've got an 18-year-old male who's 6'2" and probably played rugby for a long time, just likes to go out and get drunk with his mates, the type of violence he's going to be facing is very different to, let's say, a 55-year-old woman, single mom or two, who may have had some experience with domestic violence and now she's scared to walk by herself at night. Like what they will face, how they are targeted, as well as
Mhm.
what they can do are very different.
Right.
As a coach, that's a challenge, right? Like I can't give them the same solution.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be an adjustment to that, to understanding the problems of the people who come to you and actually try and problem solve with them what will work for them.
Yeah.
And I'll take a side note there. It's something that I say with a lot of pride. When we ran Combat Arts Institute with Noah and I, we adopted this approach with our training. And what we saw because of that, and I think that's something that's really, really uncommon in martial arts, that like 50% of our membership base were women, right? Which most classes you go to is not the case. And that was because we were able to tailor that approach to going, it doesn't matter if you're, man, woman, what you identify as, where you come from, we'll find a way to work with you in terms of keeping yourself safe. That's a couple of things there. Then I think in terms of the training methodologies themselves, how we train for it needs to be, I keep coming back to aliveness. It needs to be taught in an alive way, which is something that even in a lot of Krav Maga circles, I find sometimes is lacking. Like we do a lot of pressure testing. I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but the idea with a lot of the Krav Maga kind of techniques is because in some schools they don't spar as much. You go, we want to prepare for real world violence. What we want to do is get you to a state where you are highly adrenalized, or simulate an injury or simulate a particular situation, and then we throw stuff at you and make you deal, right? And that's really cool. It's really challenging. But a lot of time, the way that that's trained is still almost a traditional approach. We're going to make you look at the floor, spin really, really, really fast for 20 seconds. You get up, you're all dizzy. It kind of feels like you either had too many drinks or somebody hit you with hit you over the head and you're spinning. And then somebody's going to come and take a swing at you and you have to deal with it. But the person who's taking the swing is still coming in slowly. They're leaving their arm extended. Okay. As you progress, you actually need to add that alive element to that. So I think sometimes the techniques, quote unquote, are valid, but the training methodology is not always.
Right.
So how do we incorporate those training methodologies with stuff that we know is efficient and effective under stress? Yeah. So then we're looking at the pre stuff, right? What happens before? Spoke about it quite a bit. The training methodologies, which is essentially what happens during, and then some discussion about what happens after. Are you aware of, for example, use of force considerations where you live, which obviously changes from place to place? Like, what are you allowed to do and not allowed to do? And again, you don't have to be a lawyer, but if you've never taken the time to even read it, then how do you know that you're reacting in a way that will not land you in trouble?
Sure.
And what are you teaching to your students that might be, landing them in trouble?
Yeah.
And in that context, also, I think you need to, going back to cross training, you need to have a variety of options to suit those different levels. Right? So if your solution, when you've got a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So if all you know is to go throw a really good 1-2, like if you hit somebody with a 1-2, they're going down, that's the end of it. But somebody, pushed your kid and you're going to hit him with a 1-2, you're probably liable for something.
Yeah.
Right. Is 80-year-old who suffers from a mental health condition, doesn't know where they are, and they're grabbing you because you're scared. You're going to go 1-2, take that grab, like probably going to land you in trouble. So how do we give people those tools and have those discussions? Some discussion of trauma, being in any kind of violence will have an impact on you and those around you and those involved and people who might have watched, whether they're related to you or not, or connected to you or not.
Yeah. So essential for just the decision making, though, that goes into it, and the weight, because I do feel like people really resonate with the physical side of it, right? I'm going in, I'm going to put the workout in, I'm going to learn how to punch and kick and do all the things, handle pressure, all of that. But I do think it's very rare to have that pre-education and just thinking and talking about de-escalation techniques, situational awareness, and then that post of, well, what's going to happen if you do actually have this level of conflict and there's a physical altercation based on all the things that are in weight in that situation? How is it going to impact you and those around you? And again, I think those are things that maybe are not brought up very often. I know personally through, some of the gyms that I've been in for sure don't touch on that very often. I honestly haven't been. I was trying to think before our conversation if I had even been to like a structured, self-defense seminar. And I don't know if I even have. I know there that those have been offered throughout our gyms, and so-and-so is going to be coming in and doing a 1-hour course or something like that. But I would imagine even those maybe are structured quite differently across the board. So anyways, I just appreciate that you're hitting on these 3 components of it because it's easy for me to conceptualize.
No, thank you. And you actually touched on something there, which I think is really important, is saying that I really like, and I can't remember where I heard it first. I'd love to give credit, but I honestly can't remember. Is that fighting is high-speed problem solving, right? One of the things I think martial arts teach you is exactly that. Like while you're sparring, for example, you're conducting a dynamic risk assessment. You're continuously going, like, what can hurt me and how? How do I mitigate that? Where are my opportunities and how can I capitalize on it? And you're doing that in a live environment that changes continuously. So
Hmm.
you're constantly assessing, making decisions, doing something, thinking whether it works or not, calibrating, doing it again, which is a really great way of learning on the fly. So if you've never been taught all these things, you don't have enough information to make the right decisions on the fly. Uh, and going back to the pre and the situational awareness stuff that I'm obviously very big on, the less you know how to see these things, the less time you have to react when something happens. The less time you have to react, the worse your ability to make decisions is going to be. You're going to have fewer options. You're not going to have enough time to choose between them. You might be too adrenalized. Because chances are you're going to react as opposed to respond. Um, and that it could be the right thing to do, but it could also not.
Yeah. If you had advice for myself or those listening to increase your level of situational awareness, what are some strategies that you have? Or are there some
Sure.
takeaways or nuggets that we can think about?
No, absolutely. There's a million. So I think there's a couple of things that will work really well. So the kind of the situational awareness toolkit that I usually teach comprises of four main areas. The first one is our ability to baseline. So in order for me to try and understand when something is out of the ordinary, I need to understand what is ordinary, and that changes from context to context. Right. So our ability to baseline is really important. Like when I walk into a particular environment, take 10 seconds, and I'll get back to what we call the 10-second rule in a second, but look at the physical space you're in. What do I think is normal here? What would I expect to see? What seems to be out of place? So, for example, we mostly if you train in the martial arts gym, you're used to seeing gym bags lying around everywhere. If you're walking at an airport and you see a gym bag lying by a security door, you probably want to call security. So, like, what is normal in the physical space that I am in? Then I want to try and baseline the people in that space, right? In terms of what they look like, how they behave, how are they moving, how are they engaging with the environment and each other. Um, is there any groupings that I can identify to try and identify what is normal behavior and then what might be outliers? And again, we can drill into these in a lot more depth. I'm just giving you the kind of quick recap now.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing, which is really important when we're baselining, is how am I feeling right now? Like, what is my mental and emotional state? For example, my kid's been up since 2 a.m., so I've had hardly any sleep. If I walked into a situation now, am I more agitated and angry because I didn't sleep? Am I going to do something stupid? Like, am I going to be the cause of something or make something worse? So, taking 10 seconds and doing that is really important.
Hmm.
Um, I'll take a step back from that actually. We have a lot of information coming into our senses at any given second. I can't remember the exact statistic and the research you read on is different, but I think it's something like, 4 to 6,000 pieces of information per second that comes into our senses. Like it's a lot, right?
Hmm.
We can only consciously focus on a minuscule number of that, one, two, maybe three things, depending on your kind of natural hardware and maybe how caffeinated you are.
Yeah.
For me, it's half, maybe one. So the question becomes, how does our brain decide what are the things that we are going to focus on with all these things that are coming in? Right. So the way it works is 4 to 6,000 pieces of information, roughly. Again, I'll have to read the statistics. I think it's something like that. The data gets stored in your pre-conscious, and there's a part of your brain that decides what is the part that's going to go to your conscious decision making, and the rest will be processed in the background. So, for example, you roll out of bed in the morning, you generally don't think about whether you're going to put your left foot or your right foot down. That's processed in the background. So how does our brain decide what is that we want to focus on? Well, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, or the RAS for short, that acts as a filter for that information and decides what is it that I'm going to look for. And generally, it looks for one of two kind of criteria. The first one is what I think can hurt me. And it's important to make decisions, not what can hurt me, but what I think can hurt me, because that changes from person to person and based on experience. And you know, and the other thing is, what am I interested in? So tell me if this sounds familiar, but if you're looking to buy a car and you do your research and there's a car you kind of got your eye in, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound about right? Look, have you had something
Yes.
like that? Yeah, beautiful. It's not because there are more of them. It's just because your brain is now primed to look for that thing. So every time you see one, your rest goes, interested, think about
Mm.
this.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in terms of developing situational awareness, what we really want to do is start calibrating that part of our brain to trigger in response to the right things.
Mm-hmm.
So if we regularly baseline, it helps us kind of reset that process, right? Tells the rest going, here are the things I want you to look at. Here are the things that I think based on these, I need to concentrate on. Maybe because they can cause me potential harm. Maybe they won't, but at least if I know what to look for, I can assess.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that baselining things as the first tool. And as I mentioned, we want to look at the place I am in, what's normal in my environment, the people in the environment, what they look like, how are they behaving, where are they looking, how fast are they walking, are they carrying things, is there a particular emotion that they are showing, what is normal, what isn't, or what is an outlier. And finally, how am I feeling right now? So a really good tool that you can use straight away that will help you calibrate your brain to look for these things is what we call the 10-second rule. So, prescription 3 times a day for the next 30 days. When you get into a space or out of a space, stand out of the way where you're not, obstructing traffic or something like that. Take a couple of deep breaths and literally just scan. Go, cool. What's normal in my environment right now? What am I seeing? How are people behaving? And really think about this. Going like, okay, is there, a particular way that people are walking, a particular speed? Is everybody carrying things, or are people mostly empty-handed? Are they dressed for the weather? Is a particular dress code? Are there any outliers to that? Are they mostly looking ahead, or are they looking around, or are they looking behind them? How are most people interacting with the environment? How am I feeling right now? And then based on those 3 things, the other thing you would then want to do is make a couple of plans. If something happened right now, where would I run? If I can't run, where would I hide? If I can't hide, what would I protect myself with? Because always better to grab something if you can. Like, is there anything that I've got a nice water bottle. Can I use that? Can I throw something at someone? It doesn't have to be a weapon per se.
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes refer to those as defensive objects. Or is this something I can grab and protect myself with? And after any of those, who would I tell and how? So if something happened right now and I had to run away, great. I managed to run away successfully. I'm away from danger. Great. Do I need to let anybody know what I saw to maybe protect other people in that environment? Do I call the police? Do I call security? Who do I call? Same thing if you had to hide or if you had to fight. So in terms of baselining, and I kind of incorporated basing what we call the 3-point checklist, which is, place, people, and plans. The other thing, which I think is really, really important there, is intuition and understanding how intuition works and what it kind of does. So intuition can be thought of as the bridge between instinct and reason. And if I asked you, like, what does intuition mean to you, or what would you describe intuition as?
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot there.
No, I'm glad you did, because as soon as you said this maybe you got me in this mode, I just instantly thought of like those times where the hair stands up in the back of your neck. Like that sort of thing where you're like, I don't feel comfortable right now, but maybe I can't tell you right now in a split second what even is causing that. That is what I think of.
No, you nailed it. So a lot of the time is knowing, but not knowing why. It's like, I know something is off, but I can't tell you why it's off.
Yeah.
People describe it as, like hair standing on the back of your neck, or like a gut feelings is a really common answer as well. So my understanding of intuition is the way that it happens is, your brain has detected something that has the potential to cause you, or you think can cause you harm. And it is urgent enough that it goes, I don't have time for you to consciously think about this right now. You actually need to move.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's almost bypasses our rational thought and just tells you to act. Like, something's wrong here, get out. Now, the really interesting thing about intuition, well, lots of really interesting things in intuition, but the couple that are relevant to our discussion. Number one, it is a self-protection mechanism. Like, it is there to act in your best interest always. Right. Two is that it is pretty much always in response to something, whether you are aware of it or not. So, most people can describe having felt that going like, I don't know why, I just had a bad feeling about that person, about that car, about that elevator, about that alleyway, about that situation. But a really common thing that people say is, but I ignored it. All right. So next question then is, why do we ignore it? And what do you reckon?
I
Why do we
think
ignore intuition?
maybe I would assume because if you've had that feeling in the past and really nothing came of it, then you just think, oh, well, I've had that before and nothing happened. And so maybe you just downplay it. And then maybe also because you want to feel safe. And so you're like, oh, it's fine. I'm overreacting.
No, totally. So the first one is, you're right. Maybe there's been a case where you go, I had that feeling, but nothing happened. So I'm not going to trust it this time. Second one is, am I being paranoid right now? Like, is this legitimate? Or people tend to question themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another really common one is social conditioning, where we go, well, I get a bad feeling about that person, but I don't want to be rude. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want him to think that I'm whatever, an ass, a bitch, or pardon my French, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? And we
Yeah.
get taught that from an early age. Again, more common with women than with men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't make him angry, but also be nice, but also
Mm-hmm.
right. Um, so we tend to ignore it. Now, really interesting research that was done by Gavin DeBecker. So if anybody's interested, there's an absolutely phenomenal book called The Gift of Fear. And Gavin DeBecker is kind of like the foremost expert on this stuff, has been for 40 years or so, and really kind of nailed down the things that predators look for and use in order to gain access to victims. Um, so he's conducted, I don't know how many interviews, but a bazillion, with survivors of all sorts of really, really bad things. Right? Anything from attempted abductions to sexual assault to attempted assassinations to kidnappings. And there's a really common theme in that they very, very, very often say something along the lines of, I had a bad feeling about that person, that situation, but I ignored it. So
Mm-hmm.
if we do learn to listen to it, how many of these things can actually then be prevented?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I often say when I teach this, and I'll repeat this message today: if you take nothing out of today, take this. If your intuition is firing, trust it. Like, it is in response to something, it's trying to help you move away. You call an Uber, you stand there, Uber pulls up, and straight away you go, I don't want to get in that car. Don't get in that car. Sorry, had
Mm-hmm.
to change of plans. Call somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that's absolutely critical. Right. So we talked about baselining, intuition, the 3-point checklist is part of that. Give you the 10-second rules, like as a way to scan.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, when you do that 10-second scan 3 times a day for 30 days or so, what you're actually then calibrating is that RAS, that part of your brain, to then look at things and go, here are the things I actually need to look for that will
Mm-hmm.
filter from my subconscious to my conscious brain that I can focus on to make a decision. Doesn't mean they're necessarily an immediate threat, but I can better assess and make
Yeah.
the informed decision of, whether I need to act on it or not. Is that a good start?
So good. So good. Okay, so then now can I pivot just slightly?
Sure.
And do you have any kind of main ones? Because I know both of these could be probably massive rabbit holes for you, but I'm like taking it all in like a sponge, so I love it.
Please.
What about like de-escalation techniques? Because I'm sure
Okay.
there's a couple different approaches that you can have for de-escalating a situation.
Okay. So that is also a really big discussion, and I'll give you kind of one quick tip that generally will help. But even to take a step back from that, in order to de-escalate, we need to understand what is the kind of situation that we are dealing with. And I'm going to break it down into kind of broad categories. But if we're looking at generally violence, we can break it down into 2 different types of violence. The first one is what we call social violence. So social violence is reactive. It's usually the description that I really like, which I'm stealing from the great Richard Dimitri and Pamela Armitage, is a good person having a bad day. And it's usually over like a perceived insult, a misunderstanding, a grievance. You took my parking spot, you were looking at my boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, whatever, you bumped into me, you cut in front of me in the line of the shops, you spit my beer. I'm not sure I already said that. Something like that, but causes somebody to arc up.
Yeah.
Generally, when you're dealing with the good person having a bad day, you're dealing with a person just like you and I, who is at their wits' end. Uh, and as a result, they've become agitated. Now, we've all had the experience of, maybe you have a night where you haven't had any sleep. You wake up in the morning and realize you don't have any coffee at home. You're running late for work. You hit every red light. You get there, your boss is on your case about something. You open his 350 emails you have to deal with in the next 20 minutes. And then eventually somebody will say something and you just snap. Right? Like it happens to everybody. Like we're human. It happens. It's not great when it happens, but we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Afterwards, hopefully, if you're a well-adjusted individual, you hopefully also feel bad and apologize.
Yeah.
You might catch up with the person and go, look, man, I'm really sorry. I just had a phone on. I know it's not an excuse. Can I buy you a beer or buy you a coffee or something? Really sorry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the good thing about social aggression is that the majority of the time we can de-escalate it. Right? Like if it is over a perceived grievance or insult or misunderstanding, that if I can communicate clearly and effectively enough, then hopefully I can understand what that issue is and try and resolve it. A couple of things that are critical to that. Number one is managing your adrenaline. So everybody would be familiar with the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. When we see a threat, or we perceive a threat or danger, ton of adrenaline goes in our systems, a cocktail of hormones that make us faster, stronger, more immune to pain, which is really good if we have to run or we have to fight. And that's, an evolutionary thing where from however many hundreds of thousands of years ago we'd see a predator, first response would usually be to freeze. Predators respond to movement. So if I don't move, hopefully he doesn't see me, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
If it does see me, well, most of the time, my options would be I can run away or I can fight it. So our body then dumps all the adrenaline to prepare us for doing those things. The problem is the majority of the conflict that we deal with today isn't resolved by running or fighting and resolved by talking, which is a good thing. Where this is a challenge for us because we've never had to communicate with, let's say like a saber-toothed tiger going like, go eat that person. They've got more meat on their bones. It just doesn't really happen, right? So the parts of our brain that are responsible for rational thought and for communication become greatly impaired when we're adrenalized. So if somebody gets in my face and they arc up because whatever happened and I get adrenalized, there's a very good chance I'm not going to be able to A, think effectively on what to say and what the solution could be and how to problem solve it, and B, communicate that out. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where it's really common when somebody is caught that you get this like when you're trying to talk and words just don't come out.
Yes.
That's pretty much it, right? So that's really hard. So number one is, can I manage my adrenaline? And a few tips that you can use for that is number one, breathing is probably the best thing. Box breathing or tactical breathing or square breathing. You breathe in for a count of 3 or 4, hold for 3 or 4, exhale for 3 or 4, hold for 3 or 4. Slows down trickle of adrenaline, slows down your nervous system, gives you some of those faculties back.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of general life practice as well, if you do a lot of martial arts, you're generally better at managing adrenaline because you get adrenaline dumps all the time and you're forced to work through them. It's part of the training. Like whether you're sparring or whether you're pressure drilling. If you train, you've had the experience of stepping on the mat with somebody going, man, this is going to suck. And you're like, and
Yeah.
you just work through it. You get used to it. But general physical fitness and health help with that. And then, the more training that you do to create those situations safely in training, the better equipped you are to do that. So number one, we got to manage our adrenaline. The other one, which is sometimes harder, is we got to manage our ego. I don't know how many tips I can give you for that. Then, reflect a lot and develop some self-awareness and do some meditation and any other tools that can help you keep you calm. And again, I think martial arts are a good way of doing that. You get your ego kept in check on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If you're training, at least, actually, I should put a disclaimer there. If you're training at a place where you're not always the best person, then you get that, right? If you're the
Right.
smartest person in the room, find a different room. I actually think your last guest said something very similar. I think I listened to it, right? But I've heard that saying before. It's wonderful.
Yes.
So, if you train with people who are better than you, you're going to get humbled regularly, and that does a world of good for your ego. So, take a step back. So, we got our social violence. It's reactive. It's in response to something. We need to be able to control our adrenaline. We need to be able to control our ego. On the other side of violence, we have what we call antisocial violence. Now we're not looking at a good person having a bad day. We're looking at a bad person. whether that's somebody who's, maybe it's narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic, drugs, etc. That person is probably not looking to communicate with you. They're looking to use violence as a tool to get something from you. What those things are, well, that could be your possessions, could be your body, could be your life, depending on the context. And in that case, your chances of talking your way out are very slim. That person has selected you for a particular reason as a potential target. If somebody's selected you to mug you because they can tell you're not paying attention, you're wearing a really nice watch, you got the newest whatever phone, and blah 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 blah, and they've talked you to a parking lot because you're not paying attention, and it's isolated, and there's no lights, and there's no CCTV cameras, and there's no people. You're not going to go, oh, look at that person over there, has got a nice watch, go talk to them. Like you've already been selected, they've approached you, you haven't seen the approach, you're not talking your way out of that one. So the question is, which one am I dealing with? Certain things will be obvious. Like if a person pulls a weapon on you and goes, give me this, that, or the other, well, too late for talking your way out of that 99% of the time. So a really good tool, both as a de-escalation tool and as trying to identify which type you're dealing with, is a very simple question. It is not there are no magic bullets to de-escalation, but this one is probably as close as it gets, at least in giving you a baseline, is how can I help to make this better, or what can I do to make this better? If the person can tell you, they might not say it nicely, right? They might, you did this, and I want you to do it. Great, but at least now I know I can start working with that. So if they can tell you what the issue is, perfect. They might even tell you exactly what they want you to do. Then it's up to you to decide whether you can negotiate and do it or not do it or do something else. If what you get is kind of continual threats, like I'm going to mess you up anyway, well, now we've crossed over to de-escalation is not a viable option. I got to look at physical solutions. Or if what you get are kind of single syllables, muttering, I think there's a good chance the person's got too much adrenaline in their system to be able to communicate. If you're very skilled, maybe you can kind of manage to calm them down, bring the adrenaline down, continue talking. That can be really, really hard. So I think as a base for the escalation, just that single question, what can I do to make this better, is a really good place to start. And again, there are a bazillion really great books and resources that people can read and do that. And lastly, I think it's also important that, conflict communication is, so side note, I was a professional communications lecturer at university here at Perth for like 10 years. So I spent a lot of time on this stuff, right?
Yeah.
That, communication is a life skill. It's probably one of the most important life skills you can develop as a human being, right? Like, how do we talk to people? How do we communicate with people? How do we read body language? How do we read tone of voice? All these kind of things. So spending a bit of time critically reflecting on that, educating yourself on that, and take some short courses, find whatever it is that's available to you. And there's, these days, it's so easy to find resources about anything. I think is a good place to start.
Yeah, love it. And I've kind of taken a deep dive down the mindfulness track, probably in the last 5 years or so. And
it's just been, same here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's another avenue where I just think it's continuous learning. You're never going to be perfect at it or a master, but I just think there's so much to gain from various mindfulness practices. And one of it was actually an old boss of mine who, I'm a speech language pathologist, so I work more in the medical field with people post TBI, stroke, mostly anything neuro related. And my boss and kind of the approach that he took really honed in on mindfulness techniques for these individuals' recovery, incorporated into everything that we do for cognitive rehabilitation, communication, language, whatever it may be. And I was just fascinated by it. And one of the things that he really tried to touch on is that these mindfulness techniques aren't tools that we should just pull out whenever we need them, right? So these high stress situations or whatever. Okay, now I'm going to use this box breathing that I've heard of, but I've never actually practiced it daily. But now it's supposed to be this magic tool that works. And so it made so much sense. But I was like, I think a lot of us, we hear of these tools and we think, oh yeah, oh, just breathe. But there's a lot that goes into breathing and how you do it and what practice you use and
Oh,
knowing like
100%.
what your body responds to. And how does it feel like when you are in a calm state doing box breathing versus doing it, mid workout or after, whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, now I just think of these situations that you're bringing up, these high stress situations, and how, that can just even be incorporated in kind of fine tuning your skills as a survivalist, too, of, what are
100%.
your mindfulness tools to make sure that you are able to drop that adrenaline maybe at a faster rate than you would imagine? Because I don't know if
Yeah.
I've even been at a state where my adrenaline, not many times in my life where it's been maxed out, but when that time or if that time comes, I want to be as prepared as possible, right? And that's what we all try
Yeah.
and do is just be prepared and hope for the best that it never happens, but plan
Yeah.
for the worst, I guess.
Exactly right. So there's a few points that you touched on that I think are really, really important. Um, Number one, you said, people go, oh, just breathe. It's magical. I don't think there are magic bullets to anything. Anything needs practice and refinement. And we keep talking about reflection and go like, what did I do? Did it work or not work? Why? What can I do better? I think that's a process that needs to apply to anything that we do, including practicing your breathing, practicing your situational awareness, practicing your communication, practicing whatever it is that you practice.
Yeah.
The other side of that, just in the context of mindfulness practice. So I suffered for the majority of my adult life from when I was about 20 to about 39 or 40. I suffered from really bad insomnia. I'm generally like a high strung person, as you can probably tell. I talk a million miles an hour and I got a million things going on in my head all the time. And I find it really, really hard to switch off. And when I get stressed out, um, I pretty much stop sleeping. So, like, there'd be times where it would be not too bad, like I'll have disturbed sleep, but there were times where it literally, like, it's more or less ruined my life. I
Mhm.
went for months at a time where I would sleep maybe 4 hours a night and that would be broken. And then how does that
Mm.
impact like your work and your
Yeah.
relationships and health and not to mention going to sparring. Like, I'm saying that he's going to throw a jab, boom, yep, there it was. Like, I could see things, but my body just wouldn't react in time.
Mhm.
Um, I went, went through, speaking with psychologists and trying medication, trying like exercise and teas and herb and whatnot. Nothing really seemed to really help. I read an amazing book called The Resilience Shield, maybe
Mm.
5, 6 years ago, written by an Aussie guy. He's ex-SAS, like special forces, and got a PhD in a bunch of stuff, and like really clever dude. So the book actually talked about, just meditation as a practice, and like I've always dabbled here and there a little bit. My mom was actually a meditation instructor, and he recommended a couple of apps that were really cool in that book, and I started using one of those apps, which is like, I can't remember. I think it was called Atom, ATOM, only available on Android though, if I remember. And it was, at the time at least, it was free. It was like gamified really well. It started with really short, kind of like maybe even just like 2-minute practices, and was
Mhm.
really good into getting you just building the habit of doing it daily. And then sometimes would prompt you some questions about how you went and stuff like that. And then, from that, I kind of dabbled on. So I was doing it more seriously, though not, on a daily basis for a long time. And I
Mhm.
found it still didn't really impact my sleep so much until I found the right sweet spot for me.
Mhm.
And what I found, again, just from my experience, like for me, if I was doing it right before bed, like as I was going to sleep, it wouldn't make a difference. I'd still wake up. So my problem was never falling asleep; it was staying asleep. So I'm out like
Mm.
a light, but then I'm up to it 3 hours later, and that's it. Like I'm up.
Mhm.
So I found if I do it as I go to sleep, didn't make a difference. If I did it a couple of hours before I go to bed, it almost acted like a circuit breaker between the rest of the day and like time to relax and rewind and
Mm.
get into bed. I found a particular guided meditation. It was like a body scan with some breath work that worked really well for me. Got into doing it daily. I haven't had problems with my sleep since. So
Yeah.
this is 4 years now, almost 4 years. I haven't missed a day.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then, again, if we're filtering to the context of conflict resolution, I'm much better equipped to deal with that now than I was 6 years ago because I'm not constantly tired and foggy and
Yeah.
grumpy. I know how to use my breathing much better.
Yeah.
I'm aware of how I feel and how I'm responding to things better. So yeah, so I'm with you there 100%. I think those practices
Yeah.
are super helpful. And I think martial arts, in a sense, to me at least, feels very much like a moving meditation. Like when you're sparring, you're rolling, you're not thinking about anything else because there's immediate consequences to your
Mm-hmm.
mind being elsewhere. It really forces you to be present and be
Yep.
engaged with what you're doing. And then also engaged, I think, with how you're feeling about what you're doing. Like, am I scared? Am I angry? Am I, like for me, which I think is a normal thing. Like if I find that maybe I got tagged a couple of times, I get a bit riled up. I can tell you I can start
Mm-hmm.
to ramping down. And the more aware you are, then go, actually take a breath. It's cool. Just pull it back, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But that applies to anything in life. You have a conflict with a coworker. Well, are you starting to get aggravated when they throw a couple of proverbial punches instead of just going slip, slip? And how do I come back with that? Right. So, that ability to kind of observe, redirect as needed.
Yep.
Yeah, is very useful.
So good. So, so good. I'll kind of take us in a different direction because I could go down the
Please.
self-defense and just all of your training that way for hours, I feel like. Let's talk about
Appreciate it.
coaching now. So when you merged into coaching, because you've been coaching now for around 20 years, how has your coaching philosophy just evolved over time? Because you have so much experience in various practices. And I guess just out of curiosity, when did you get into coaching?
Okay, so let me take a step back. Both my parents were teachers. Like my dad passed away many, many years ago, was a principal of a school. My mom has taught a bazillion different things over her lifetime. She got multiple degrees and stuff. A very smart lady. So, I've been teaching for a very long time, but I've also taught a lot of different things. So, uh, I started teaching guitar when I was in my late teens because I've always played. I was a lecturer at university, first in finance and financial risk modeling, then in professional communications and business development for 10 years. And then a lot of time I was doing both. I was teaching at uni during the day, teaching guitar at night, and then teaching martial arts, obviously. And then I worked for a whole bunch of other educational institutions in Australia. We call them registered training organizations. They issue what we call like vocational training. So it's not university degrees, but it's stuff that's generally related to specific jobs. If you want to become an electrician, a security guard, there's specific courses
Mm-hmm.
even for those. So I worked in that industry for a very, very long time, either as a teacher or as a consultant. I'm also a qualified personal trainer, so I taught that for a while. I studied music university. I taught music for a while, taught business. And then when I was working with Risk Solution, I was teaching a lot of stuff in mostly defensive tactics, violence prevention, as well as risk management, leadership, organizational culture, a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's not just, and sorry, I'm not trying to kind of like big on myself, but I think that the main thing is when you're teaching a lot of different things, you start seeing kind of the common threads. So in
Yeah.
terms of how things have changed in my approach over time, I think when you first start teaching, and that depends on how deep you are into your arts as well. I started teaching relatively early into my martial arts career. People tend to be focus on technique. Put your foot here, turn your hip that way, move your arm this way. And that's necessary. We need to have a technical base in order to do what we want to do. Like that's the tool for us to practice our art. But you don't want to stay there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had a really strong focus on technique for a long time. Generally, even how I practice the art. I've never been like a brawler or anything like that. I've always been a guy who's more technical, and I really enjoy drilling that kind of stuff. From that, I think there's a move to principles as people become, oh, actually, if I group these techniques together and they work in this context, here's the overarching principle that guides these, and there's a shift to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I think the biggest thing that has been for me, especially in recent years, is, I find it depends on who you teach and how you teach, but like less is more. I, I,
Mm.
I think a lot of coaches tend to kind of throw the book at you, and it can be very frustrating in a couple of ways. Number one, if you got a coach like, every repetition you do, they now stop you and go, actually fix this, fix that. I got 5 reps in that hour because like they spent 10 minutes telling me how to, how to fix this one thing. Like I just want to get more movement in.
Yeah.
So I think for me is like one small thing at a time. If somebody's coming and go, cool, here's how you practice your break falls or your throw, particular throw or particular strike or block, whatever. Like, I'll go like, cool, change this one little thing. I'll leave you to it for a while. I go, cool. Now here's the next thing in the chain. Fix that. Here's the next
Mm-hmm.
thing in the chain. Fix that. And I think the other part of that, which I do a lot more of, and that can be really intimidating, I think, sometimes for beginners. So there needs to be a balance with that, is I purposely let people problem solve. Like if somebody comes to me and go, I have this question, I don't know, like, I'm trying to do this, but then they do that. What do I do from here? I'm like, I don't know, let's figure it out. Like, show me what you're doing. And then maybe I'll
Yeah.
try it. I don't know. Maybe what I'll do won't work for you. So let's come up with some options together. So a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
kind of playing through things,
Yeah. And getting
which I
them
think is,
comfortable with just that exploration process and know, like, okay, I'm going to try this.
absolutely.
It might not work. And that's
Yeah,
okay. I'll try
100%.
the next thing.
Totally. And, like getting people used to failing is so important.
Yeah.
Which again, like martial arts, like you fail all the time. That's again, if you're not doing it right. And that's awesome. So I think for me at the moment where I'm sitting with that is there needs to be a few things. One, like I said, I try and really pull back and let people problem solve a lot. I want to give them a good technical base, but also balance that with being able to problem solve and get the repetitions in and not overcorrecting. I think, and that depends on the class and the style of coach and the style of system that you like and how you like to train. But I've been to a lot of self-defense classes and schools where you come in there and everything's like a fight to the death and you got to be serious and da 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 da. I'm going like, I just finished work. I'm coming to work out. I don't want some idiot standing there fucking yelling at me for like 2 hours. Like I didn't join the military like to have drill sergeant, ass hat, like shouting at me.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we balance the fact that it is a serious topic and, the consequences of getting in those situations are real with also, hey, we're here to have a bit of fun and grow together and just have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to find that balance between, here's a time to get serious, now here's a time we can crack some jokes and have some fun. I think that's a hard balance to find. I think over time I've gotten much better at that.
My next question was, what's the difference between a good coach and a great one? And so I feel like you kind of answered that as just less is more. Anything else that you feel like you would add to that?
Look, I think the only measure of whether a coach is good is how good your students get. It's not about you.
Mm,
All right. So one of the things that I think is important, again, that depends on the style that you teach. And I'm really leaning away from the traditional martial arts here because in there you go to learn if you go, here's the list of techniques that we have to learn and we have to learn them in exactly that way,
mm-hmm.
it will attract people who can do them in that way. For people who don't, they'll come, they'll try, they'll leave.
Mm-hmm.
With stuff that's more flexible, combat sports, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can be any kind of type of player of Jiu-Jitsu that you want to be. You still have to learn the fundamentals, but then you
Mm-hmm.
tailor the game to what works for you. And I think self-defense should be taught the same way. So I think being able to identify with your students, A, what are they here for? B, what are they naturally good at and maybe not as good at? C, mentally, where are they at? And in terms both of, strengths and weaknesses and likes and dislikes and how are they feeling today
Mm-hmm.
on this particular class right now on the mat? And then tailoring what you teach and how you teach it to that. And when you've got that in a group of people, you go, cool, I've got 20 people on the mat and I got to, here's a theme that I want to work for, but I got to
Mm-hmm.
make these adjustments. I think that's probably where you start seeing that next level of coaching as opposed to, okay, everybody skip, everybody do a 1-2, everybody do this, everybody do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where you base it, but then you got to be able to micro adjust as you go along. And then that will be reflected in how good your students get. Simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And it does, I mean, it goes back to the example that you had, like for self defense training, where, individualizing your approach to what this person's trying to get out of it. So a mom that's
Yeah.
going through domestic violence, or, you have a 20-year-old that keeps getting into bar fights, or, whatever it is,
Yeah.
those situations are going to be very different. And so, just as you know, in a martial arts gym, you're getting all walks of life coming in through the doors. And so,
Which is awesome.
um, it is awesome, but I would imagine as a coach, it's a skill to figure out how to individualize your approach to each of these practitioners, and especially when a lot of these classes are run from like a group standpoint. So how have you learned and evolved that?
For me, it
Yeah.
was more just experience. Like I've been teaching over a long time. And like I said, I reflect about everything all the time. So, same as when I would train, if I finish the class, quite often I would go home and go, cool, what worked, what didn't work, why, how do I make it better next time? I've also had like really amazing mentors and role models to learn from. I've had like a million really amazing coaches over my life. I'm very privileged to have trained with people in the self-defense world who are like as good as it gets. And in terms of combat sports, people who are like, world champions in a bunch of different things, and people who are really high level in the traditional stuff. And like, I'm just so lucky and so grateful
Mm-hmm.
to have had that. But the three that have probably had the most profound impact on me, both as a person and as a martial artist. I mentioned Noah Greenstone, who was my first kind of sensei in Krav and Jiu-Jitsu when I ran combat arts with. And I mentioned Gav Schneider, who was the head of my Krav system, who's just, the guy is still like my hero. And then the third is a gentleman by the name of Manny. Manny had a really unique approach to trainings. He was primarily a boxer, even though he had like multiple high level black belts and done a lot of different things. He also worked in like security, really rough places for like 20 years, like a bouncer in some really tough places and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? But Manny's approach was really unique in that he just had this knack, still has this knack for being able to help you fix small things, just like problem solve on the spot. So I would go to him and go, hey, can we do a PT today? Yeah, cool. What do you want to work on? I'm like, well, this person I'm sparring with, they're a bit taller, a bit longer. I can't figure out how to get inside, so I can do what I want to do. All right, show me what you're doing. And we'll just kind of simulate. And then he'll go like, fix this, fix that, do this like that. We'll practice it. Half an hour later that night, I'm cleaning that guy up in sparring. He just had this knack of just being able to
Mm-hmm.
problem solve and fix things like that. And the thing that was really cool with that, he also, because of that, you'd go to a class there and he gathered these students who are all generally already very experienced and came to him to solve different things. So you go to a class there, there'd be 10 guys and go like, well, I'm like primarily a Krav guy. I've got a bunch of experience on the thing. Another guy who was like a Golden Gloves boxer. Another guy who was like a Muay Thai champ. Another guy who was like a Kyokushin dude. Another dude who was a judo guy. Another guy's like a BJJ guy. We're all working on the same stuff in different ways.
Uh-huh.
So I spent a lot of time training with him. And I think that was really a big part of that. Like just that was just the mode of thinking all the time is, how do I
Mm-hmm.
problem solve? How do I fix this? How do I problem solve? How do I fix this? And he would do this for all of us in a class.
Yeah.
So I think I learned a lot from how he teaches. We always refer to him as like the cheat code guy. If there's something you can't fix, go to Matt. He'll give you a cheat code and it's good. So I think that was a really big part of being able to adopt that approach.
And so essential that you had. I know you just listed kind of these three mentors or people that you looked up to and continue to look up to, but just such an essential part of growth is just surrounding yourself with people that have such different knacks for,
Totally.
their passions.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel bad now that I'm not mentioning all the other amazing mentors and coaches that I've had, because
Truly.
like I said, I'm very privileged that I've had so many and still do, who have had and still have a tremendous impact on my life
Mm-hmm.
and my training. I think with those three specifically, um, I also had the privilege of working with all three of them outside of martial arts. So, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
met them through training, but ended up working with them, working for them, or working in their business,
Yeah.
something like that for many years. So got to know them both on a professional and personal level,
Yeah.
and then also see how their particular philosophy for training applies to how they run a business or how they engage with clients or how they engage with people. And that was also really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I'll just take a quick detour here, but one of the things that I think is also a challenge, and that's very specific to the style that we practice, right? So in Krav Maga, there's a million different organizations and different million like affiliations, and each one has their own curriculum. Each one has their own grading or promotion style. Some use patches, some use you get like practitioner levels and expert levels. Some use belts, some use shirts, what have you, right?
Yeah.
So like in our style, we do use belts, right? Now we very much adopt when we grade people. Our approach is very much looking at, we want to make sure they have the fundamentals and the technical base. But really, if we're looking to teach self defense, it all comes down to, are you able to apply things under pressure when it counts? So our gradings are rather than go demonstrate this technique, demonstrate that, go, here's a bunch of situations, show me how you deal with them. And each person might deal with them a little bit differently. As long as you can deal with the situation, good. Um, where that gets challenging is when you actually do need to adopt, especially at a higher level. Cool, you've got the basics down. Now, like I said, we want you to spar, we want you to wrestle, we want you to roll, we want you to be a well-rounded martial artist and have the ability to fight, not just go, here's the basic self-defense stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the two are very closely connected, right? Like you have to train in a live way. You have to get used to what it's like to being balled up, to getting hit, to being able to apply your strategy and your game plan to somebody else. That's where perhaps tailoring things to people can be difficult, because at some point there also needs to be a line going, here's the standard I expect people to meet, and everybody needs to meet it in order to progress in the system itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that can be a challenge. Mm, At the beginning, not so much. If you're going through your first couple of belts, yeah, okay, that's fine. Once you
Yeah.
get a bit more serious, we go, well, you need to be able to share this stuff with other people. Like a big part of promotion in our style is also, are you able to teach this stuff to other people? Like if you pretty much by the time you get your brown belt or your black belt, if you're not teaching, you're not getting promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly past black belt, like you need to be coaching regularly, and that's part of the requirements for continuous growth. So you need to continue to
Mm-hmm.
practice the art, but you need to be able to pass it on. So that's where it can get tricky, because, like I said, if I've got the 18-year-old and the 60-year-old with different physical abilities, well, there's some things that one person might not be able to do as opposed to another. How do I then give them a fair opportunity to progress through the system?
Right.
Which is like, it's a different kettle of fish altogether to application and that. But it's something that for me, I'm also aware of in terms of how do I then shift the focus of what I'm teaching into who,
Mm-hmm.
if I want them to hit a particular benchmark for something like that.
Yep. And
I
very
hope that makes
challenging.
sense.
It does,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because I've seen it. I have not practiced Krav Maga, but I mean, you see it in BJJ for sure through even that belt system. Is same thing as if you give somebody that's in their 40s, 50s, and they're just starting at their white belt, and as they're progressing, I still think a blue belt test, or yeah, as they're progressing through your purple or brown, it's going to look very different for somebody who is just a young spry guy out of high school or in
Yeah.
college or whatever versus somebody who just had knee surgery and is coming every day to the gym, learning these new skills and practices. Their roles are going to look different. Their body's ability is going to be different, but doesn't mean
Totally.
that they necessarily shouldn't progress. And so judging that, I would imagine, is a process, and I feel like
Yeah,
for each coach, this is for them to kind of figure out. But
for
yeah.
sure. I've got a lady who's been training with me for probably about 18 months now. Um, she's amazing. Like I can't speak highly enough of her. She's an absolute legend. She's in her late 50s. Um, she has got more injuries and head health issues more than like the rest of the room combined. She's like broken everywhere and has had, like a lot of like serious health issues and bits and pieces. But she decided she wants to learn how to keep herself safe, and she wants to get fit as part of looking after her body. She did like some classes, really enjoys it. So is she going to progress at the same rate as, like we said, a 20-year-old person who's already come with some background in sports, or, like an athlete who can also train, you know, 2 or 3 hours a day, four,
Mm-hmm.
5, 6 days a week, because maybe they live at home, or they don't have to have a job, they don't have kids, they don't have all the other
Yeah.
things that take us away from training. Well, no, she's not going to progress at the same rate. But what I think then is the most important thing, and to me, she's like the poster child. That is consistency. At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
if you just keep rocking up, you're going to get better and you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Like she rocks up 3 times a week without fail. She's always there. She's very comfortable in saying, look, this is something I can't do. Like my knee's too bad. I can't do this right now. Or, I'm not comfortable doing this because of that. And the challenge, but also the opportunity for me then is to go, cool, let's figure out how we can make something else, or make
Yeah.
that work without putting pressure on that particular injury or something like that. So it's been both really awesome to see her grow and develop, and she's a
Yeah.
weapon.
Yeah.
But also as a coach, I feel that has made me, so much, like it's continuous opportunities for me to become a better coach, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as much as those markers or milestones or ways that people measure that are beneficial, I think for that person to see their growth. And then I think also for, a coach to also kind of judge and see where people are at. But in the end, I feel like any practicing martial artist that goes into probably whatever avenue it is, once you start really going, you realize like it doesn't matter. You get so much more out of the classes from a character standpoint, a physical standpoint, just like what you're learning. And so is that an added, part of some of the practices? Sure. But I think you're in it for the wrong reasons if that's like what you're only solely focused on. And I would
Oh,
say
totally.
a good majority of people aren't. And so that's the good thing from it is as stressful as it probably is for maybe a coach
Mm,
or for people to come in and try and figure out like, well, how is that 60-year-old guy getting a purple belt now or whatever it may be. I think in the end, those are the things that like it doesn't matter is am I looking at all my students and are they feeling satisfied and are they taking away something from what we did today
totally.
or what we've done over the weeks? Yes. And are they enjoying their time and getting better? Great.
Yeah.
I'm doing my
No,
job.
totally. Agreed. And and I think that person's going, how come this person got that belt? And they're like, you're missing the point, dude. And
Yep.
I mean, hopefully generally those people don't last either, which is good.
Truly.
Like, that's generally not the culture you want in your gym and not the vibe you want.
Yeah.
And the people who get it. The people who don't
Yeah.
generally either get humbled enough and fall into, fall in line and get it,
Yeah.
or they leave, which like I'm cool either way.
Yeah. And speaking of culture in a gym, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but I am super curious because I think it is a rarity that you had, around 50% of your individuals coming in being women.
Yeah.
And so, with that just being incredibly rare, how did you achieve that? I mean, really, what do you feel like was the secret in creating the culture or environment that ultimately fostered the comfortability of both female and males
Yeah.
coming in?
Sure. And I should mention, like females, males, but we also had people who identify as anything and everything. Like I think we were very much felt like like a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a few things. We had a very strict no egos policy. And we have kicked people out going like, here's a code of conduct you have to sign as part of being a member here when you first join. And if you don't meet that code of conduct, here's the process, depending on the level of the offense, so to speak, you either get a warning or you get kicked out. If it happens more
Mm-hmm.
than once, you get kicked out. And we were, I don't want to say, we were strict. Right? Like if people didn't behave in the way that was inclusive, respectful, then we would ask them to change their behavior. And if they didn't, then we would go, thanks very much for coming. This is not a gym for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's something that members see and appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first thing. Um, Number two is it's got to start from the top. Like it's got to start with how the owners and the head coaches and the coaches and the senior students carry themselves and conduct themselves. So I think when you teach classes in a particular way and you engage with people in a particular way, the people who then become senior students and then become coaches later on engage with people in a similar way because that
Mm-hmm.
is how and this is something we're also like actively talking about. Like when we're going, cool guys, let's get the team together and have a chat of how we can make experience better for that person.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that we continuously worked like with the team on ourselves and with the team. Um, we all did some courses on, like I said, trauma-informed teaching courses and kind of professional development in that space. The other thing, which I think is important, is got to make sure that there are also female coaches who are teaching. It's one thing to go, and I think even more so as a self-defense school. If a woman comes in and goes, I want to learn self-defense school, and here's a guy who's like 6'8" with tattoos, a clutch and such champion and bouncer, and I go, you just have to do this. Forget it, not gonna happen. It's very different. We had a lady who she was one of our top coaches in Krav. She was like 5 foot at the most. Like she was tiny. Um, but she was a freaking weapon. Like she would just clean guys out. It was awesome to watch. Guys who were bigger and more experienced, you just absolutely bowl them up. So, having female role models that soon come in and look out for and go like, yeah, I want to fight like her. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. But really, I think the most important thing is just actively talking about what is expected to in terms of the standard of behavior
Mm-hmm.
and norms of behavior, and making sure that it is enforced. Like a lot of people kind of pay lip service to it, but they go, this guy's being weird or creepy or inappropriate, and go, don't worry about him. He's just this and that. No, 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 no. Sit him down, have a chat. If he doesn't stop, he's out of here. Like
Yeah.
that's non-negotiable.
Yep.
So I really think that's where it comes. That's where it came from. And the other part of it was, I think, and I'm going not necessarily just for women, but I think in terms of creating a safe training space in general, some people go harder than others. Some people are bigger and stronger than others. And there will be times you're partnered up with somebody who is stronger than you. Maybe they hit too hard. Maybe they go a bit too hard. And it's not necessarily like malicious. It could be a lack of control. Like it could be an ego thing. It could be a lack of control. If it is malice, hopefully you pick it up and you kick the person out and that's the end of it. But I think there needs to be also a way that you can coach in a way that will allow people to test those boundaries. For example, if I partner somebody who's ginormous and really strong and really fit with somebody who's really small and just starting out, and go, cool guys, hold pads and we're going 50%. Well, 50% here and 50% here are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get them to work together? And okay, maybe I get the smaller person to first hold the pad and go, cool, I want you, the big guy or bigger person, start really, really light. Person holding the pad, when you feel it's enough, you tell them this is as hard as I want you to go, and vice versa. So now I'm giving them something that's kind of more experiential
Mm-hmm.
and tactile to go. Cool, this is where I need to sit when I train with this person. So I
Mm-hmm.
think doing things like that can really help as well. Because when you just kind of
Yeah.
throw, go 50%, do it at this, and like it doesn't necessarily translate into something that's yeah, equal or
Yeah.
easily transferable between people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just such an important skill, because that can be uncomfortable to figure out, whether it be for the person that's new or for the person that is super experienced and trying to just follow, well, this is what coach said, so I'm going 50, what do you want me to do, sort of thing. Kind of opening up the window just slightly for them to figure it out and adapt to one another, because we know just being
Yeah.
adaptable outside of the gym is super important too. And
Totally.
not just getting so focused on staying in your lane, running through the motions. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's important. I think there's a story that we had. There was one particular dude who came and started training with us. He was, I think he done like, 6 months of some traditional martial art before he came and started doing Krav. And straight away you could tell, something's like a little bit off with the guy. And at the time, we had a particular really strong cohort of women that were coming through Krav. Like they'd all kind of started training at the same time. They had a really great friendship, and they all like really lifted each other up, and they were badass. And we had like an end of year grading. They all excelled. They all graded really, really well. A couple of them like jump bells and stuff like that. Which, like they were just absolute weapons. This guy who thought he was much better than he was didn't perform as well. And we had our end of year Christmas party, and we're like presenting awards and presenting belts. And so we present everybody, and we kind of do it in order of belt, right? You present from kind of lowest to highest, right? So he
Mhm.
was pretty much right at the beginning. And then all these ladies start getting called up, and he has a little too much to drink, and then starts going outside talking to guys, just talking shit, and oh, she's really not that good, and she's that, and she's the other. And then goes on Facebook and starts posting that stuff because he was obviously just like, had way too much to drink. I wasn't aware of any at the time. Like I was inside the party having a good time. The next day, I'm getting a couple of messages going like, "Hey, here's a couple of screenshots of stuff we saw last night. What's going
Mhm.
on there?" So that dude's membership was canceled pretty much on the spot. This is not the kind of behavior that we tolerate. It's absolutely unacceptable.
Mhm.
Like, regardless of whether men or women, you don't talk shit about your training partners. He made some really inappropriate comments. Like, that's
Mhm.
not how that's not what we teach and not how we expect people to behave here in the gym and outside of the gym. That is just not acceptable behavior. So thanks very much. Here's a refund for the rest of the month that you already paid for. Like, see ya.
Yeah.
Um, and, oh, I'm really sorry. Can I come back? Nah.
Hmm.
Oh, I promise it won't happen. Nah. That like that is the line in the sand.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen very often, right? Like I think with most gyms, it's not very common. Like I said, people tend to kind of weed themselves out when they don't fit.
Yeah.
But on the other occasion, you get a special case, and those special cases were dealt with as we felt was appropriate, which was
Yeah.
we don't tolerate that kind of behavior, and that's the end of that discussion. It was actually funny in hindsight. I didn't realize how much of an impact just his presence had already had on my classes. Because I remember at the time going, like, man, it seems like attendance in my classes is really low these days. Am I doing something wrong? If I
Hmm.
change something in how I teach, am I not? Da, 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 da. And turns out, like, the women who were there just didn't want to come to the class because they knew he trains on that night and nobody wanted to be around. If nothing else, it makes good business sense, right?
Yeah.
But forget that. I mean, like I said, my parents separated when I was quite young. My my dad passed away when I was young. I grew up with my mom, with my grandmother, with my sister. I got married. I've got two beautiful daughters. I don't want them living in a world where this is the crap that they have to deal with all the time. Uh,
Hmm.
so whatever I can do in small way to contribute to that, and that includes having those conversations with guys going, "Hey, this is not appropriate. Here's why." Actually, I had a conversation with some dude in the gym just about this, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. No martial arts, just local gym. I went to lift. Some random guy just comes up and starts chatting to me about this, that, or the other. And at some point, started making some comment about some lady who was working out, this and that. And the hardest thing is to get work out my neck because I keep looking at everybody. I'm like, man, that's not cool. So it's like, but my wife doesn't feel comfortable coming to this gym because she feels like guys are doing that or they're coming and offering help when it's not warranted. And they're like, it's not cool. Don't do it, man. And he was like, he just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, 5 minutes later, I actually saw him leave. And the point is also, it's not, I'm not trying to go, hey, look at me, haha. But like the point is actually to engage in conversation in order to change the behavior. Hopefully he was going, oh, well, okay, I made somebody feel uncomfortable. I need to adjust how I behave and how I act so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And it's not like those kind of conversations or situations are easy for you either, though. Because
No,
I do try and think about that as like, those are moments of conflict, right? And so
100%.
it's sometimes the easier route I think sometimes people make is just kind of getting caught up in the drama or oh, yeah, this guy's just saying these side comments. Like, it's probably easier to brush it off and be like, oh, yeah, man, or whatever. But like morally, I think the tougher thing is to stand your ground sometimes or to have those conversations that are a little bit uncomfortable and know, like, okay, I don't actually agree with that. And so, I think with having those repeated experiences is what ultimately helps you build a foundation of who you are, what a gym is when multiple people are kind of on the same wavelength. But that takes time and
It
maybe a
does.
number of those uncomfortable experiences to really figure out, like, no, this is actually what I truly believe in and what I want this place to represent.
Totally. And the things we talked about before about like, social aggression, violence, like that could be the perfect stuff for something. You walk up to someone and go, hey man, it's not cool to say that. Oh, what are you going to do about it? Like it can very easily turn into something like that.
Mhm.
So, the need to address those in a way that's, uh, assertive but respectful. One of the things that I found had often helped guys get on board with some of those mental processes, especially around the self-defense classes, was we'd sit down for like a situational awareness workshop. I ran one yesterday, doing another one next week, and this exact example came up. Um, and I'll pick a guy in the room and go, especially a guy who's like big and fit and knows how to fight. Like they're generally probably not worried about a ton. So here's a scenario, right? You finish work, you get out of the office, you walk to your car, like you park far away. So it's a 5 minute, 5 minute walk or something to your car. You drive home, you get out of the car, open the door, get inside. Like, what things are you concerned about? So I don't know, probably thinking about dinner or this, that, and the other. And then, I asked a woman that she's like, oh, is somebody following me on the way out? Did I wear my hair in a ponytail in case somebody grabs it? What if I've got a scarf around my neck? What if I've got my phone here? What if I got and by the time I got home and I opened the door and I made sure there's like a list of like 40 or 50 things. And all of a sudden you see the guys kind of scratching their head and they go like, we are not living in the same like reality here.
Mhm.
Um, so even just bringing that awareness to them, going, oh, okay, there's a lot more here that I'm not experiencing that I need to be aware of. Then, in terms of how change behavior, well,
Mhm.
maybe if they're walking down the street and they see someone in, perhaps she thinks they're following, go, you know what, I'm going to cross over to the other side of the street. I'm going to wait for a few minutes, let her walk, and then I'll keep going. I'm not in a rush. Small thing, and those things do make a difference, right?
Mhm.
So, how can I be a kinder, more considerate person, knowing that other people in my community, they have a different experience to fear and to violence and to
Mhm.
stress and to risk that I do?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And so can you tell me, you worked with risk to solution. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is? Because gave you opportunity to train tens of thousands of people.
We're very lucky, yeah. So R2S, which is the company that Gav founded, that I mentioned
Okay.
before, is the head of my Krav Maga system.
Yes.
An integrated risk management firm. Okay, so essentially provide, consulting and education and training as well. At some point, it was manpower as well, although I don't think that's a part of the business anymore. In risk, security, leadership, and organizational culture primarily. But really, the thing that tied everything together a lot of time was an approach to risk that Gav kind of coined the term resilience, as in
Mm.
proactive resilience.
Mhm.
And we had a very kind of strong methodology in terms of how to work around that. But so I started there as a consultant and trainer, kind of worked my way up to managing the operations in Western Australia, and then eventually consulting and education around Australia. And then took over from an amazing guy by the name of Joe Saunders. When he left the firm, I took over as the national practice lead of violence prevention. So we worked a lot with government, like federal, state, and local government in violence prevention, a lot of stuff in the workplace violence and aggression prevention space.
Okay.
Um, and worked with an extensive list of clients, like a lot of stuff in government, a lot of stuff in, for example, designed the violence prevention kind of methodology for Parliament of Victoria at the time, for Virgin Australia, for a whole bunch of other kind of government departments and bits and pieces. So
Wow.
uh, the idea was to provide them with a training methodology that will give them the tools to prevent first. So a lot of it was around the pre. We incorporated some element of the during and after, but really everything was how do we prevent something from happening? And that's also a very different approach to training, right? So most of the time, if you're looking at even the hobbyist martial artist, you might get them for a couple of hours a week for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Some people are a bit serious, maybe a bit more. Some people maybe a bit less. Now I'm getting somebody for 3 hours once every 2 years. Most of the physical solutions I'm going to give them by the time they finish the workshop, like forget it. It's not going to work. They won't be able to pull it off. What
Yeah.
can I give them in that time that will make sure they don't get into that in the first place? So a
Sure.
lot of the stuff that I discussed previously, that's pretty much directly out of those toolboxes, right? Like
Okay.
the 3 point
Gotcha.
checklist, intuition,
Yes.
baselining, etc. So we had a very kind of strong methodology on how to deliver those. And that was really fascinating because it's a very different approach to that. Most people have gone to, they go, cool, I went to a cool martial arts seminar. Whether that's like there's a famous fighter who comes into town and you go and you go, man, they
Mhm.
show you like a million techniques. And the next day you don't remember any of it. You go like, it
Right.
was a fun experience. It was really cool. But how much of that did you actually take that you can apply to your game? Like nothing, right? And there's a lot of similar stuff with, we'll run a whatever knife defense workshop or a women's self defense seminar or this and that. The actual physical skills you're gonna retain are maybe if you get attacked as you walk from the parking lot to your car after the seminar, you pull it off. The next day, chances drop. Within a week, forget it. A year
Yeah.
later, right? So what are the key skills that you can give with those kind of things? And I think those more mental tools in terms of scanning things that are applicable that you can practice and identify straight away are very yeah, that's where the value is in those kind of environments. So it was very different but a lot of fun. We had a really amazing group of coaches and trainers, all super experienced. And the team that was actually working on the curriculum itself and what we're actually teaching were all just like phenomenal. So, people who are behavioral scientists and experts in leadership and experts in risk management and neuroscientists and people
So
from martial
cool.
arts and defensive
Hmm.
tactics. And how do we kind of piece this thing together?
Yeah.
So I'd like to think it was real quality training.
Yeah.
And the feedback we got was generally very positive, which is great. But yeah, so I was there for 5 years. And then, so made a career change. I still speak to Gav probably once a week. He doesn't
Yeah.
live in Perth. He lives in Brisbane. So the other side of Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a 4 or 5 hour flight, but we still speak every week. He still comes over for seminars. We still catch up quite a lot. So we don't work together anymore, but
Very
still very
connected.
close. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of everything that you've done, what moments stand out as maybe some of the more meaningful ones to you?
So getting my black belt, I've got a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, black belt in Kudo, black belt in Krav. My black belt in Krav Maga, that was a life-changing moment, definitely. I can kind of go, there was like when my dad passed away, we moved to Australia, when I got married, when my kids were born, when I got my black belt. Like there's these moments in your life when you're going, at this time, this happened and it changed the trajectory of my life to go that way.
Yeah.
Uh, it had such an impact, both in terms of, our black belt gradings are not easy. Like you don't cruise through it. You're going to know you've been through something and
Mhm.
you have to earn it.
Yeah.
So that particular grading was at the end of a 5-day training camp in South Africa where we were training, 10, 12 hours a day. At that point, I did a ton of training leading up to that. Then on the final day, we had the grading, and the gradings themselves have a very tough, like physical fitness component, then a few hours of fighting and demonstrating and this and that. And then there's essentially like a black belt component where if you're not grading for a senior belt, you leave the room. And the long and short of it is you get Shark Tank for an hour or two and just, you have to fight all the
Wow.
seniors continuously and a lot of pressure drills and a lot of, so by the end of it, it's been a good anywhere from 3.5 to 5 hours where you've been working hard at the absolute shit kicked out of you. So that in itself, getting through that was just amazing.
Mhm.
And, it's one of these things you're going, I hope I can get through it. I don't know. Like, I believe I can, but
Yeah.
so getting through that is very empowering. The other part of it, which was really special, was the grading panel in that particular seminar where obviously Gav, Noah, who I mentioned before, who was kind of like my main sensei at the time, Noah's sensei, who flew from the States, was there. Mike Belzer, who is like amazing. So if you want to look up some really cool self-defense stuff in the States, look up Mike Belzer and Meredith Gold. They have something called Raw Training. They
Awesome.
are unreal, like scenario training the way it needs to be done and amazing. So Mike was there. So he was kind of like my martial arts granddad, It's like my sensei's sensei, who I've never met before, but heard all these things about him, right? So I got to train with him there for a week, which was amazing. Gershon and Karen, who's a phenomenal self-defense Krav Maga expert from Boston. A few other people. It was an amazing kind
Yeah.
of panel of martial artists who I've been looking up to for a long time, even if I didn't know
Right.
in person. So having them all there and get that was what was really special and really
Which
changed.
naturally just even having a community like that is going to build the energy for an
Totally.
experience like that too. So very cool that it was that memorable and that you were able to have such influential people there
No,
alongside.
totally. And it really changed a lot in terms of both what I thought I could get through. I was like, wow, if I got through this, I can probably get through most things. And the tremendous sense of empowerment you get from that, going, I'm actually cool. Whatever else happens in life right now is probably not going to be as bad as what I just went through. I'm okay. So I think, getting my black belt is, and it's something I can't speak of enough. There have been, various moments throughout my coaching career where I've had students who've come to me and go like, hey, this situation happened and, the training helped keep me safe or keep someone else safe. So stuff like that. Thankfully, it doesn't happen too frequently, which means my students are not idiots who are getting into fights. But,
Yeah.
when it does happen, it's one of the most rewarding things you can have. Cool, I've
Yeah.
actually made a difference to somebody's life.
Absolutely.
So that's always been special. Been doing this for long enough now that I've graded quite a few people to black belts as well. So being part of anybody else's black belt grading, knowing what it meant to me and knowing what often it means to other people is very special in a way that,
Mm-hmm.
it's like being able to, I'm quoting Gav again here, but perpetuate the knowledge and make a difference. I think I like that phrase.
Yeah.
So that's been really special. And more recently has actually been just training with my daughter, which has been really fun.
So
So
cool.
she's she turns 8 in a couple of weeks. She trained in Krav for like maybe a year when she was like 5, then stopped for a bit. And then at some point we were like, look, she spent a lot of time, a bit too much time reading, watching TV and in front of screens and whatnot, even though we try and limit it. So the discussion was you have to pick some kind of sport. I don't care what it is. Like you have to do something physical a couple of times a week with
Huh?
other people. Because the benefits to that are yeah,
Yeah.
innumerable. So like I would like it if it was martial arts, but you can pick whatever you want.
Yeah.
Swimming or basketball or gymnastics. I don't care, but you have to do something. If you
Yeah.
don't, no more screens. So, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do martial arts. So she started doing freestyle martial arts, essentially like freestyle karate. We were doing that on Saturdays. And I'm actually very good friends with the guy who owns the school. Like we've trained together. He's an awesome guy. So I really like how they run the kids program. I know what they teach. Like I'm really comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So because
You might have a little bit more of an opinion on her diving into that versus like swimming or
yeah, I'm
I mean
like, man,
maybe if she did fencing, but other than
no,
that.
100%. There's been a few times she comes here and I'm like, let's just fix that when we get home. I'm trying not to, but it's really hard. So she started doing freestyle on Saturdays. Now, what had happened was just before the kids' freestyle class, they actually have an adults and teens BJJ class. So I was like, well, I'm there anyway. I might as well jump and get another jiu class every week. Why not? So I started
Yeah.
doing jiu-jitsu. And then there's a bunch of kids from her class who jumped into it as well. So it's really nice. It's kind of this mixed age class. So we
Uh-huh.
do jits together.
Oh,
Then
that's
she
awesome.
does freestyle after that. And then the other thing was on Thursdays, I usually do a boxing PT with my coach, he's unreal. It's the way that I really like training. It's not for everybody. He's like, everything's fundamental, everything's uber technical. Like, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, in front of the mirror for half an hour, get in your stance, just practice head movement. And he like
Yeah.
make micro adjustments, like, oh, you moved by half an inch too much there, turn your shoulder. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody gets into that. I
Yeah.
can do it for hours. And he's trained some high level UFC guys, high level MMA champs. Like he's really good. But usually it'll be right after school. So I'll pick her up from school. We go there. I'm like, cool, you can do whatever you want. I'm just gonna train for an hour. You can do it. And then she goes, you want to jump in? She's like, yeah. So now we do boxing together on Thursdays as well, which is really nice.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, you need to see her on a speedball. That's crazy. She gets into like hyper focus. She's already much better than I am. I suck at that thing. But she stands there like, it's hanging quite tall. So she's got like this big box for her. She's standing there.
Right. Oh,
Well, I'm hitting pads, which is really fun.
yes. Which just
Um,
so cool that you're already getting to embrace those are going to be memories that you'll have forever
totally.
too.
Yeah.
And an awesome I think that's a really cool approach as a parent and as a coach. I always think about like how challenging that would be to be a coach and a parent and how do you know, navigate both roles in your life and know that
Yeah.
like there's a balance. And so the fact that you just gave her a choice, like you got to choose something, and then she's merged into these avenues and then also has kind of
Totally.
decided to grow and experiment alongside is really fun, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I think there's a couple of really cool things there. One, I think being dad and coach for me, it's really hard. Like I didn't want her to go into the classes I was teaching, go train with somebody else. Like get
Yeah.
your own experience, do yourself. It's fun that I can be your training partner. That's really
Yeah.
different, because then it's not like a hierarchical thing. It's not like we just do stuff together.
Yeah.
So I find that's really fun. And the other thing is I'm really happy that she's getting like what I would consider like a well-rounded education. She
Yeah.
does boxing, she does gist, she does like freestyle and self-defense stuff. I'm like, great, it's exactly what you want. You get a little bit of everything. The way that I think it should be trained.
Yeah.
And we've like amazing coaches as well.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so that's really
So
nice.
fun. Can you tell me a little bit about Modern Warrior Alliance, what that is a little bit?
Totally. Absolutely. So the Modern Warrior Alliance is essentially like a loose affiliation of schools from around the world where we all adopt a similar approach to training in that, we believe that self-defense comes first. We want to also then create people who have the ability to fight. And we want to also create good people, not just, people who can bang.
Yeah.
So, this has come through like a bunch of martial arts networks from around the world. But in essence, whenever we can, really usually ends up being once a year or so. We pick a location, we all go there and spend a bunch of time training together. So we bring, like all these amazing coaches from all of these schools who come and join. Hopefully we get a lot of students from a lot of different schools. So you get to train with people you haven't trained with, people who have maybe a slightly different experience or different approach to how you do things. Still within the same like way of thinking, but maybe a different
Yeah.
technical approach, which is really cool. So it's very much about, like sharing and training together and growing. And, we'll run workshops over the long ones are like 5 days. Otherwise, we might do it just over a weekend. And generally, what we'll do is we'll break it down to like different things. So let's say we're going to do 3 hours on striking, or 3 hours on grappling, 3 hours on knife defense or something.
Hmm.
And then we'll break those 3 hours into 3 1-hour sessions where one of the coaches is specializing in that will come and show you their approach to it. So you might get somebody who comes in and does something super traditional. And then you might get somebody who's all like, well, actually, here's how we apply this. Maybe like one of the guys used to do this really cool thing. We do in knife defense. One of the guys will do really traditional kind of like almost jiu-jitsu-y, flowy kind of type things. Another
Hmm.
guy will do like Filipino martial arts stuff. Somebody else will do the pure craft stuff. Like here's how you block, trap, smash. Then another guy will go like, I've done some of this, but I'm primarily a boxer. So if you put a blade in your hand and you start like playing with that, you're kind of like boxing with a knife. Really cool. So like really stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
But the idea is you go, I'll have a little bit of this, kind of this amazing buffet of, I can pick all
Yeah.
these things and piece them together in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And then we kind of go through different aspects or styles of training. So like grappling, striking, clinching, groundwork, whatever. And generally at the end, it'll be like a grading, for Krav. Yeah. So that's something we've been doing for 12 or 13 years now. I think since
So
the
cool.
first one.
And who's we, Ron? Like, how did this even get
So
started?
this actually
That's so
got started.
cool.
Thank you. It started through Gav, mostly because he
Okay.
trained and traveled all around the world. So he had all these
Yeah.
connections. So I think the first couple were like mostly just him going, here's all these people I think are awesome. Let's get together and train.
Yeah.
But then, these people also have their own networks. So like for the last one, I was like, well, I'm bringing Gavin, bringing this, I'm bringing that. But I also know this guy is really cool. And so, it
Yeah.
starts to kind of grow organically with people who are like-minded, which is really nice. So it started as like I said, a couple of events that we had in South Africa. Then we had one in Israel. There's been a bunch in Australia. So it's really fun. It's really special. Most people who attend these generally just they absolutely love it, and you meet really amazing people. I've
Hmm.
got friends from the first one I did 14 years ago that we
Yeah.
still keep in touch, and we still like talk about training, and yeah, it's really awesome. It's like just building a community over time.
Yeah. So is this, I mean, did it start off as invite from some of the higher end people like, hey, I like what you're doing. Let's bring it all and let's come all together and just train
Yeah.
together. Is it now anybody can go and just
So when we set an event, usually, whoever organizes the event will kind of decide who the coaching panel is, or, the seniors will decide the coaching panel is, but we always invite people from, obviously we got to know who the person we're inviting is.
yeah.
Just randomly contact. We go, hey, do you want to come teach? And we're like, no, I've trained with this person before. They're really good. They've got a cool approach. I think they'll add value. But in terms of students, we open it to the public. So the last one we ran at the
Wow.
start of this year, it was just like 3 months ago, not even. We had people from 10 different schools rock up, which was really awesome.
Yeah. What kind of impact have you seen so far since it has been over a decade now that you guys have been rolling with these? And what kind of impact do you hope to continue to see through these events just on the martial arts community?
Cool. So I think one of the things that, I'm very passionate about, and I think a lot of the coaches who are part of that are very passionate about, which is, understanding the differences and the balance between martial arts and self-defense and training to really keep people safe, which, like I said, it's not something I think is done well often. More and more so with time. I think there's a lot more places who get it now than they were even 5 or 10 years ago. But I still think it is something that just isn't generally done very well. So being able to get people who get it, who share the same approach, who have the experience, because a lot of those coaches, all people with same, like, similar experience with what I did in terms of consulting in that space, doing the research in that space, and then being able to share that with a bigger community. So if nothing else, it gives those people a bit of understanding. Even if you don't take anything from that and going like, well, it doesn't mean that now I perfectly know how to de-escalate, but at least I know where to go and look. Or at least when I go back to my gym, I can go, hey, coach, can we look at this thing? I just learned this thing. It's pretty interesting. And I think it would add value. So I think being able to start creating a community that can share and perpetuate that knowledge, I think is really important and makes a difference to building safer communities and making sure people are safer and creating martial arts gyms and schools that have better culture. And I think that makes a difference. So in terms of where we'd like it to go, I mean, it's an organization, so it's not where I would like it to go. It's where we would like it to go. I can't speak on anybody else's behalf, but we just want to keep putting the message out there and keep help making a difference, perpetuate the knowledge and make a difference.
Yeah. Well, and I can definitely tell that you're making a difference and already have in so many different avenues, especially professionally, while also being a husband and a father. So how has fatherhood influenced, and your marriage influenced, your perspective on training and teaching?
Marriage, maybe not as much. My wife is amazing. She is very patient with me and my various injuries and continuously breaking myself and always up training. And like when we met, I was already training 6 nights a week. And we actually had this conversation very early on in our relationship. One time she was like, hey, do you want to come over, have dinner? What's your movie? So I'm like, yeah, great. I finished training at 8:30. I'll be there around whenever. And I got there and she's like, so this is like the 4th time that I asked you to come over to hang out. And you're like, I'll be there after training. And we've only been dating for like a few weeks at that point. Is this what it's going to be like? And I was like, well, I guess let's have this conversation now so it doesn't become an issue later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been a person who is very passionate about my work, regardless of what I've done for a living. I've always taken a lot of pride and, really throw myself into work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if workaholic is the right term, but maybe, I don't know. And martial arts on my life, it's part of who I am. It's not just something that I do. And it always will be. That is a non-negotiable. So if this is going to work, I understand there's going to be times where we'll have to sacrifice and maybe, whatever. But like, I'm always going to train.
Yeah.
I may not train 30 hours a week, but I'm always going to train.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, cool, now I know. And she's been super supportive ever since, to her credit. I think there was one point where she was like, you can't keep getting hurt like this anymore. I had this like really freak accident where I was sparring with one of my best mates, phenomenal Krav guy, like awesome fighter. I threw a right cross to the body. He kind of like lifted his knee and his knee just cracked me on the forearm. It was just like, it wasn't even hard. Like it was just a freak angle at the freak wrong moment, just smashed my forearm in half. Like literally, it was kind of like dangling bits of bone, kind of like almost stick it out. And so, it was like a trip to the emergency room and emergency surgery and a plate. And I couldn't train for 3 months and this and that. And I'd had a bunch of injuries, she was like, oh, okay, another injury, whatever. The first training session back after that, I'm sitting at that point, I was still running the gym. So I'm sitting there and the whole day I'm going, I haven't had any sleep. I'm not in a good mood. Like, don't spar today. Just, teach your class, do some fitness, go home. One of the guys comes in early. Hey, man, want to do a couple rounds? I'm like, yeah. First thing is literally we touch gloves. He throws a spinning heel kick, cracks the edge of catches the edge of the plate, cracks it again. And just in that moment, she had walked through the door to come to the fitness class. And I'm like, oh, God damn.
Yeah.
She's like, do I need to take you to the hospital again? I'm like, yeah, I think it's broken. Which it was. Like, he had cracked the bone again. I was out for another 3 months.
Which it probably drives her crazy when you get hurt. It probably drives her even more crazy when you can't train. And so the combo
100%.
together, she's like, hey, we got to figure something out.
100%. So like, as she's driving me to the hospital, like, Ron, like, this can't happen again. Like this. Yeah. Okay. Fair. So, that kind of forced me to be a little bit more smart, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's always been very supportive. Where I think it really changed in terms of how I thought I would respond to things outside of training, more like in a kind of real conflict type stuff, is really when my first daughter was born, where, like the considerations changed from a couple of perspectives. One, like being broken all the time, well, actually different tack, but being broken all the time now means I can't play with her as much as I want to. Like, can you put me up on the monkey bars? And I'm like, my shoulder's jacked,
Yeah.
my knee's too sore, I can't crawl on the floor, that kind of stuff. I go, okay, different things matter more.
Yeah.
So how do I adjust for that? But from the self-defense perspective, well, before I was like, well, if something happens, I'm confident that I'll be able to protect myself physically and protect my wife physically, and we're good. Now all of a sudden, when there's a child involved, you're going, do I want her to see me being aggressive or getting hurt or hurting somebody or both? How would it impact her? All the stuff we talked about before, right?
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
what happens if there's a lawsuit? What happens if somebody then comes to look for me because we got in a fight? They find out where I live. All these things start, oh man, this is really real now. As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just, yeah, I've been teaching this stuff for a while, but now, you're thinking at a more visceral level.
Yeah.
So it definitely had calmed me down a little bit more. And like
Mm-hmm.
where maybe before, if I'm sitting in a room with my family where something happens, if it was before my kids were born, I'd probably go, well, I would go and get involved and help, because what's the point of learning how to protect yourself and others if you don't do it? Whereas now, maybe my first consideration would be, well, I got to get my family out of here. After that, I can go and help. So my decision-making process has changed, and the risk preferences have changed.
Mm-hmm.
The risk appetite has changed. And then I think the last part was just saying, I train with my daughter quite a lot, and I would love when, so my eldest is just about to turn 8. My little one is 2 and a bit. And I would love for her to train when she's old enough. I think she would have the temperament for it too.
Yeah.
She's like, she's a firecracker. So, also being able to think about now on more around, I've never loved teaching kids. It's never been my thing. I've loved teaching adults. I like, I like when I can be a bit more serious about it and serious in my approach and how I deliver rather than,
Mm-hmm.
and now more and more, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm actually talking now with a couple of them. Maybe I get involved with some more teaching kids a bit more. And how can I
Yeah.
share these skills with kids? Because that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if I'm going to keep going on my tirades about, self-defense and why it's not taught well, it's one of the things that you see again, every martial arts school will advertise, teach your kids self-defense, come and do jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, karate, boxing, Muay Thai, and may name the system, right? Here is the 100% honest truth is there is absolutely nothing physical that we can teach a 5-year-old to do against a fully grown adult with the intent to commit physical violence against them. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to armbar them. They're not going to knock them out with a 1-2. They're not going to block a punch. They're not going to do any of that. It is not possible. There are other things they can learn from martial arts, which I think are super important in terms of like, the school bullying and roughhousing stuff like that, 100%. Like if somebody pushes you at school, you know how to handle it. Somebody grabs you, you know how to handle it. Great. If, a 6-foot adult grabs you, you're not getting out of that as a 5-year-old. Forget it. No way. And anybody who tells you otherwise, I think is being dishonest with you or with themselves or both. You can tell I feel strongly about this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's really
I mean,
important.
like, as you even brought up a kid's self-defense class, I'm like, everything that you brought up prior of like how you structure an adult's class and doing those 3 phases, I'm like, how would you even approach a kid's self-defense class? Completely different.
Totally. But what are the things then that we can teach kids and that they can get out of martial arts that will keep them safe? Well, what are they going to get from any martial art or combat sport they do? Well, if they've got a good coach and a good school where they do foster that kind of community where you can speak publicly and openly encourage that, well, they're hopefully going to learn some really good boundary setting.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you're going too hard. I need you to slow down. I'm not comfortable training with that person. Those kind of things I think are super important, and the coach needs to support that. We talked about intuition. If your kid goes, I don't like training with that person, I get a bad vibe, then they don't train with that person. That's the end of that discussion for me. So, encouraging them to talk openly about things like that. Two, some resilience. You can get hit and you can get bowled over and you can fall down and you're not made of glass and you can get back up and keep going. And that's important, right? Learning, my son's a bit rough, but like learning how to take a punch is never a bad thing, right? Obviously, providing it's done, in the right context and environment.
Right.
I'm not talking about that, but learning that it's not the end of the world. If you get hurt, it's okay. Like, take a breath, see yourself off, get up, try again. It's cool. Learning how to fail regularly. If you're training at a school where they don't just randomly award rank to everybody at every grading, everybody gets a trophy, which I don't think is great. I think then you also learn that sometimes you don't get what you want when you want it every time.
Yeah.
There are other people who might be better at you at something, and that's cool. Congratulate them and move on. See what you can learn from them. There's a ton you can learn from martial arts that are like super important life lessons.
Yeah.
And then, all the situational awareness and stuff, it's still like there are tons of games you can play with kids to help them develop that kind of stuff, which will, again, make them less likely targets, better aware, better able to communicate. So I still think, I think everybody should do martial arts, 100%. The world would be a better place if everybody trained, even for just a little bit of time.
Yep, I agree.
But I think, again, when we teach kids, we need to be honest about what exactly is it that we are teaching. Because if somebody goes, I'm setting my 5-year-old, 6-year-old to learn how to protect themselves against no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're diluting yourself and them, and your coach is selling you snake oil. I think they should train. I think there's lots of them to do, but let's be honest about what they're learning, where it can be applied.
Yep. Yeah. So good. For anybody listening who maybe wants to feel safer, maybe more confident, what would you say a first step they should take is?
Okay. I think there's a couple of things that are really important. My experience has been that most people come to learn self-defense because, they feel, insecure about something, or don't feel confident, or maybe there's a particular threat that they're worried about, whether it's something they saw in the news or something they experienced. But even taking a step back from that, right? If you're learning self-defense because your goal is to live a long and happy life and healthy life, have a look at your life as a whole, not just the risk of violence or anything like that. So, and I'm speaking again from my experience in where I live, etc. So I'm just about to turn 43. What kills 43-year-old males in my community where I live? Well, suicide is probably the biggest one. Cancer, heart attacks, car accidents, violent crime where I live, which is a very safe part of Australia, is not even, number 30 or 40 on the list. It just doesn't come up. So if your goal is to live a long and happy and healthy life, what are you doing to address those things? Even before martial arts, are you watching your diet? Are you doing a mindfulness practice? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you have a good social support network? People you can talk to about how you're feeling? Those are things I think we need to review and consider all the time. Even more so if you have kids and you have people you need to look after, etc.
Yeah.
So even before anything else, let's look at that. And again, I said, I think everybody should train in martial arts. So whether you're looking to learn self-defense or you just want to get fit or you want to do something, find a gym that has the right culture and the right kind of coaching style for you, because that's more important than anything else. You can cool, I'm learning effective self-defense, but I hate the classes and I hate the coach. And then what's the point? You're not going to last. You're not going to stay there. You're not going to stick it out. You're better off go to a boxing gym, go to a Muay Thai gym, go to a jiu-jitsu gym, go to an Aikido gym, go to whatever. Find something you really love, and you can always add the self-defense stuff as you need it. I still think it's always good to start with that, but the main thing is find something that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Then do some reading on the pre and post. I'm more than happy even I can send you maybe an email. You can attach it to the notes of some really great books that people can read.
Yes, I love when people recommend books. And so, if you have more, I would love to add them to the list.
I've got a bazillion. Yeah, I'll send you.
Okay, be prepared, listeners. You're going to get a list of bazillion.
For sure.
Just a quick heads up before we keep going. If you hear a book, product, or resource mentioned on this episode that you want to check out, I've got you covered. Everything we talk about will be linked in the show notes for easy access. And if you're looking for more recommendations from past guests, I've put together a full running list so you can explore anytime. Just head over to my link tree in the description, or you can find it on Instagram at @thegrippod. All right, let's get back to it.
And then I think the thing that's really important is walking into a martial arts gym the first time can be a very scary experience. Obviously, depending on who you are and what your experience has been, etc. But like starting from scratch, especially if you're a bit older, and you walk into a gym and all you see is a bunch of young guys bashing each other. You go, oh, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can do it. How are people going to treat me? Am I going to hold anybody back? Am I going to get hurt? Am I, like you start questioning yourself a lot. So what I would suggest is first and foremost, and I touched on that, is find the right kind of culture. And there are a few things that you can look for when you go to a martial arts gym, any kind of gym. Number one is see how people interact with each other before and after class, not just during the class. Are people welcoming? Are they friendly? Are they having a conversation? Do people want to get to know you? How is the coach interacting with people before and after class, not just during class? Can you tell they're being authentic? Because a lot of people will go like, I have my face where I have to sell a membership. I have my face when I coach, and that's a different personality to who I am at home. I don't know. I'm just Ron, and I engage with my environment. Right?
Yeah.
Don't be impressed if you see a million black belts on the mat. Again, my opinion, but I like to see rank almost like as a pyramid, right? You should have fewer darker belts than we have lighter belts. So if you go to a gym and you go, cool, I see there's 20 people on the mat, 10 of them are black belts, another 5 are brown belts, a couple of other colors, and a couple of white belts. To me, a lot of time it says that either people get promoted really, 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 really quickly, or that the group could be not inclusive.
Yeah.
It's the same people who've been training there for a really long time. It's all the same black belts. They've been there for 10 years, and other people just don't get included, and therefore they come, they train, they leave. So it could have an implication on the standard. It could mean that people are not necessarily welcome, or the training is just too hard. Like you go, okay, step in, white belt, what's the first thing you do? Well, okay, fight to the death. Okay, how about you going to teach me how to throw a punch first? Right. So don't be impressed if you see a ton of black belts.
Yeah.
Quite often I want to see the opposite. I want to see fewer darker belts than I do lighter belts. And also then see how the darker belts interact with those who are beneath them in terms of rank. One of the things that I love to see when I go into a class is you see a brown belt who will pick a white belt, come train with me, let me show you some stuff, and guide them through things like in a supportive way, not trying to show how big they are. So I would actually look at how people train, how the coach facilitates that before I jump into any class. Because that will inform me whether I'll be comfortable training there, whether I feel that I'll be welcome, and these are the kind of people that I would like to connect with, and whether I'm going to get something out of it or not.
Yeah. So good. Such good advice.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, I wrap our main episodes up with 2 main questions for all of my guests. So my first question I have for you is, what's something you wish didn't have as much of a grip on you in your life?
Wowza. Okay. So I'm a very anxious person. And, managing anxiety has been an ongoing theme in my life. As I said, I'm highly strong. I take things seriously. I dive into things. And learning to manage that has always been a challenge. I'm much better now than I was years ago, but this is always something I want to work on continuously, and I probably will till the rest, for the rest of my life. So maybe managing anxiety is not necessarily the right thing, but how to observe my thoughts without getting caught up.
Yeah. And you've talked a little bit about exploring mindfulness apps or techniques. I'm sure training also has been helpful in just staying healthy through exercise. Any other tips and tricks that you've taken over the years that you feel like has helped with that?
I'm a big planner. So I've always been a person who likes to go, what is likely to happen? How do you probably, I've got a very structured approach to things, right? So one of the things I think is really important is in the context of being able to keep yourself and those around you safe, not just from violence, but general safety, crossing the road, tripping over something, whatever, is the ability to make plans and think about, what are the things that are likely to happen? If something happened, how would I react? How would I respond? What can I do? All the data shows us that, when we do this, we respond better. I feel there's a lot of people who refuse to do that because engaging with those thoughts can be scary and produce its own anxiety. I don't want to think about what happens if I die. I don't want to think about what happens if somebody attacks me. I don't want to think about what happens if I have a car accident. I don't want to think about what happens if I lose my job. Like, they're not fun things to think about, but engaging with those things in a healthy, in a constructive way will allow you to put things in place so that you don't have to worry about it, because at least if this happens, I can do X and Y, and here are my options.
Mm-hmm.
So I think engaging with those things, engage with what scares you in a way that is safe and constructive and helpful, and that can be done with the help of someone professional or by yourself through whatever practice helps you do that. I think is a great way of making sure you live a long and happy and healthy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here because I'm
Yeah.
also a planner, but
Yeah.
I think through a range of experiences, I think planning gives us a sense of control. It makes us feel like we are at least planning so we can be in control if some of these situations arise, good or bad,
Totally.
But I have found too that, how do you respond if things don't go according to plan? So even if options A through Z that you all thought through, whatever, the infinite one actually is what happened.
Yeah.
Or does, sometimes do you get so caught up in the planning process that it's taking away from being in the present? And so,
Sure.
it's such a balance because
It
I
is.
completely resonate with the planning. And it's almost like therapeutic to me. But I have found, through some circumstances in my life, I'm like, oof, I planned too much and it bit me in the butt.
Totally. No, I totally love that, Kaylee. So can I take that kind of full circle to what we spoke about before in terms of, scanning and awareness and intuition?
Yeah.
If we're thinking about this in the context of high-speed problem solving and decision making, we go through scan your environment, have a plan. But then regardless of your plan, your intuition fires, trust your intuition.
Yeah.
Right? So there's got to be an element of like, here's what I do to plan, but I also need to be able to adapt and problem solve as things go along. I think martial arts gives you those tools as well. That being said, I think if you don't plan at all, you're putting yourself at it. Like failing to plan is planning to fail is something that I like to say. Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you have to be married to your plan and stick to it 100%, but at least have an idea of, here are the risks that are facing me in my life. Here are some options of how I can deal with them. And at least have if we talked about that decision tree, have a starting point in the decision tree to go, well, I can go in different ways, but I have the tools to do that. I think a lot of it starts even beforehand, though, with engage with the things that you find scary. Like engage with fear in a healthy way and explore that. Yeah.
Good. Okay, switching it up. So what's something you wish you had more of a grip on in your life?
Yeah. Hello? It feels like almost the other side of the same coin. I said, I wish I had better ability to observe my thoughts without getting caught up with them. So having a grip on that, which is, I know it's kind of the same thing from the other side. I still think that is for me, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, honestly, I practice a lot of gratitude, as part of my mindfulness practice every night. We can always say we want more of things. I'm healthy. I've got a healthy family. I've got lots of love in my life. I've got roof over my head. I've got food. Like, life is good, man. Like, there's always stuff I want is the source of all misery, right? But
yeah,
I think more the stuff that I want is just better ability to focus on those things and continue working to be grateful and to engage with those around me in a healthy way and kind of observe my thoughts without getting caught up when I need to. And that's a work in progress, right? Like that never stops.
Yeah.
You don't get to a point where, cool, that's it.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right, Ron. Well, I have a feeling that people listening or watching are going to want to connect. And so to do so, you guys can check out Ron's website at www.ron amram.com.au. I'll link all of these also in the show notes. You can also check out the gym that he's currently coaching at the Barn Martial Arts and Fitness. I'll link their website as well as their Instagram accounts. Ron, anything else that you have for the people?
Stay safe. Be kind.
Stay safe, be kind. Mic drop. Ron, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel
Same
like
here.
my head's about to explode just because I've learned so much, and very much appreciate just your knowledge, your insight, your stories, and what you've done over the years, and what I know that you're going to continue to do, because the passion is radiating off of you. And so
Thank you.
I really appreciate you just taking the time and sitting down on this bright and early morning for you on little to no sleep. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks so much for the opportunity, Kelly. It's been a genuine pleasure. Thank you for bringing martial arts to the fore. I think everybody should train. I think it's important that people learn about the martial artists and what they do and how it can help everybody. So kudos to you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Grip. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow along on Instagram at The Grip Pod to stay up to date on new episodes. That way you can send over a DM if you've got a question you'd like to hear answered on our roll call series. Now remember, stay sharp, be grounded, and never lose your grip. See you next time.